In the end, Europe wasn't America, and the multifaceted system wasn't as useful here, so Luke felt that it was better to have a local tyrant to help him. Kincaid had been a professional hitman for 30 years, and he knew a lot of people in the business. While these people wouldn't risk their lives for him, it wasn't a problem to buy intelligence. For example, from Michael Bryce, the has-been 3A bodyguard. With money, everyone was old friends. For Luke, money was never a problem. He simply paid up front for 5 years' worth of intelligence. Kincaid wasn't an unreasonable person. He gave the big backpack a casual glance and nodded to seal the deal. After Luke left, Sonia opened the door and glared at Kincaid suspiciously. "Don't tell me you're going back to work when I'm about to give birth." Kincaid chuckled. "How can that be? I'm already retired. I definitely won't go back to my old job." Sonia wasn't someone who took things lying down. If it wasn't for the fact that her stomach was so big it looked like it would explode, she would have already hit him. Even so, she still kicked the bag of money. "Don't tell me it's full of rubbish newspapers." Kincaid rolled his eyes. "That's my daughter's milk money, school fees, startup funds, and so on." Sonia sneered. "If he's not looking for you to go back to your old job, why would he give you so much money?" Kincaid chuckled. "I'm going to start a company." Sonia, WTF. While the couple continued to banter, Luke had already flown to Italy to meet Vanessa, the woman with the electrifying eyes who had settled down in Milan. In the end, Vanessa didn't have a clear goal for the future, but she was very interested in Luke's proposal to establish a new service company in Europe. After this service company was perfected, it could provide clients with services like weapons, intelligence and tailoring, like the service companies under the high table. Of course, Luke didn't say exactly who the company was for, and only said that it was for certain big professionals. There would only be 3 to 5 people each time, but the costs wouldn't be low. This time, he didn't give her an advance payment. Vanessa herself was rich, and whatever she did was purely out of interest. He didn't agree nor refuse when she expressed interest in participating in some interesting operations later, and simply said that he would give her a reply later. Vanessa pressed him to the ground and ruthlessly used those world-class legs to deal with him before she let him go. The Justice of Star clone spent most of the next 10 days on various planes. It went to Central Asia first, then China, then Russia, before heading for the North Pole. Then, it went to Ushuaia in Argentina, before flying straight to the South Pole in the armor and doing one round before coming back. Only then could Luke confirm one thing: his connection to the Star of Justice clone wasn't affected by distance. Whether it was the South Pole, across the Pacific to China, or Turkey on the borders of Europe and Asia, he still had perfect command over the clone. This was undoubtedly an extremely important point. Otherwise, it would be a joke if his clone went offline overseas one day. It was still best to use disposable identities. Even if he disappeared in plain sight on a plane one day, all that would be left behind was a folk mystery. In any case, a lot of mysterious and strange things happened in this world. No matter how many records S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, had on file, it was impossible to investigate all of them. Half a month later, his clone finally returned to America. However, it didn't return to New York directly. Instead, it appeared as Batman again in Los Angeles at night. Batman plowed through several gangs that had gradually started to run wild in recent months after Luke and Selina left, leaving behind broken bones and injuries. This time, Batman, who had the stealth function, was no longer forced to run by reporters. He let them take a lot of footage before he successfully disappeared among the skyscrapers in downtown Los Angeles. Luke earned another 46,000 experience and credit points from Los Angeles. Host's experience, 312,000/500,000. Credit, 506,000. Look at how LA had fallen into chaos not long after he left. He still had to rely on himself to do his bit in building the foundation for a lawful nation. After fretting over the country and its people for a moment, a certain detective decided to visit other major cities in America to help his colleagues maintain law and order. While his clone was out on a jaunt across the country, Luke's life was peaceful. At most, he would take into custody a few murderers or would-be murderers every few days or so. Alice and her daughter were finally in better frames of mind. A lot of the credit had to go to Carrie. Her elementary spirit form was unfathomable. She was indeed strong. Back then, with a single scream, she had sent Blackheart's group, along with Luke, flying hundreds of meters. The power she displayed was terrifying. But she couldn't control it. For her, the destructive force from using a spirit form was like an ordinary person being able to lift a truck. It was just a byproduct of her losing control of her emotions. Now that she had found her mother, Alice, her mindset had improved, and she wasn't interested in controlling her superpower or whatever. Luke didn't want the girl to relive the nightmare of being experimented on right after leaving the damn base, so he had only just observed her from the side. So far, the spirit form absolutely looked like a system bug sort of ability. It could employ most mental abilities, like telekinesis, mental communication, mental perception, and so on, but was limited by Carrie's mental state. She had autism and couldn't control it. She had never thought of learning to control her spirit form to make use of these abilities, and worked purely off instinct. It was like how ordinary people and combat experts punched others. An ordinary person would hit wherever, like in the eye or the stomach, but a boxer could kill someone with one punch. The difference was like between the clouds and mud. Not only was Carrie a child, she also had autism. Luke naturally couldn't be reckless when he used her and her mother's amazing abilities. Thankfully, elementary pheromone control was still very useful. After half a month, the mother and daughter trusted him very much. Luke didn't feel guilt over this. Generally speaking, he wouldn't use this ability on his own people or friends to twist their thoughts, since it ran slightly contrary to a person's most basic free will. But both mother and daughter had severe psychological issues. If he didn't use this method, their lives would only be more painful. Their biggest hope was to be together and to live in peace. He wasn't a stickler for morality, giving them freedom, but with their psychological issues wasn't necessarily better than the peace of living under control. It wasn't a bad thing to use his ability to give them a life like this. In any case, apart from getting rid of their negative and volatile emotions, he had no intention of controlling them to do anything. As long as he had a clear conscience, it was fine. At that moment, Jenny called him. "Do you need me to remind you that it's almost April?" Luke was blank for a moment. After being teased so many times by CEO Jenny in the past, his thoughts spun, and then he smiled. Isn't it just the other companies putting their smartphones up on the market? What are you afraid of? Jenny said, "So, it's been more than a month since Valentine's Day, and you didn't think of me?" Sigh, a CEO can't even compare with a secretary. Hearing that, Luke sweated and said, "Okay, I'll come find you this afternoon." Jenny found that odd. "This afternoon?" Luke chuckled. "The sun is bright in your office. The view from the window last time was pretty good." Jenny pooh-poohed at him, before she said, "1 in the afternoon, then." She then hung up. Luke turned off his phone and scratched his head. That's really early. That being said, he still went. Valentine's Day or whatever, he wouldn't spend it with Jenny nor Elena. That day would forever be an ordinary one. He wasn't stupid enough to dig a huge hole for himself, even if he now had the Star of Justice clone. But Valentine's Day this year was when the hand ninjas had charged into Metro General Hospital and were wiped out. He and Selena had been monitoring the hospital entrance that night. Although conditions hadn't been great, Luke had left for a bit before he returned with a bunch of snacks from his inventory a few minutes later, and enjoyed them with Selena. So, technically speaking, it was Selena who had spent Valentine's Day with him. Of course, neither of them had mentioned it that night. Thinking for a moment, Luke had lunch before he left for the phone company in Nassau County. It was inevitable that Jenny would look for him now. Her true objective definitely had nothing to do with Valentine's Day, or she would have called him last month. It was already the end of March. Calling about Valentine's Day was clearly just to increase her bargaining chips so that a certain stakeholder who had utterly no interest in meddling in company affairs would give her some reassurance. The car with black windows and random license plates once again entered the phone company's garage. Luke again took the exclusive elevator directly to the CEO's office. As before, he didn't see anyone when he entered, only the coffee cups in the open kitchen. Luke took off his coat and rolled up his sleeves before making coffee. Compared with fine foods, he was much more clueless when it came to coffee. He had enjoyed coffee in his previous life, including instant coffee from various countries, but he couldn't hide his perfunctory attitude toward coffee. In this life, he would order and try all sorts of coffee in a cafe, but he only had two things to say about the taste: delicious, not delicious. It didn't matter to him if it was sour, bitter or some mountain cat **tea. He cared about the last one even less, given he was quite obsessed with cleanliness. Thus, he just made coffee with instant powder. He absolutely couldn't be bothered to grind the coffee beans himself. The downside was that it supposedly tasted a lot worse, but Luke couldn't tell. The upside was that it was done quicker. When Jenny came out of the bedroom, the coffee was ready. Sitting down next to him on the love seat, Jenny took a sip of her coffee. When will your coffee-making skills reach the level of your cooking and baking skills? Luke chuckled. It'll be hard. After all, I'm not interested in studying it. Jenny was lost for words. She still found it hard to understand how a man whose culinary and baking skills were on par with a chef's could be terrible at making coffee. It had to be pointed out that the coffee made by Jenny's maid at home could blow Luke's coffee out of the water, while his cooking was superior to hers. But Luke was here today to talk business. Jenny didn't waste any more time and got straight to the point. After hearing her out, Luke spread his hands. What are you afraid of? Isn't this something we were already prepared for? No one company can monopolize the phone market. It's already very good that you can control when the others enter the market to some extent. Jenny tapped her knee absent-mindedly. But this company is my blood and sweat. I'm afraid. Luke hugged her and said, Hey, do you think this is a TV drama? We have the advantages of technology, creativity, and market entry. You also have a lot of funds, right? How much did you make from the Stark Industries shares? Jenny came back to herself when she heard that and nodded. Not as much as last time. I still have a portion to dump, but the real profits are only about $1 billion. Wait, didn't I send you a notification after the operation? You didn't see it. In fact, even if the phone company were to collapse right now, she could still stand among the top in the country as a board member of Stark Industries. Luke's expression didn't change. I'm just reminding you that we made another fortune. Jenny looked at him suspiciously for a moment, but still chose to believe him. After all, they couldn't get along if she doubted him all the time. Luke secretly wiped his sweat. He didn't care how much money Jenny made. In any case, he was very rich, and was still getting richer. Like the stash of illegal cash in his inventory, for example. He had been a little excited at the very beginning, when he swiped $20,000 from the Carlos family in Mexico. But after he went to Brazil, pried open Hernan's mouth and earned more than $200 million, there was no longer any sense of excitement. It was all because he was no longer pressed for money. He wasn't a tycoon like Tony Stark, who was obsessed with experimenting with new and advanced technology. Most of the time, he was just a porter. He could modify suitable products for himself with the abilities and mature programs he ported over from the tycoon. Tony's Mark armor cost more than $100 million. Luke's armor was only $10 million at most. Thus, his and Tony's expenditures when it came to making armor were worlds apart. So far, the tycoon had poured more than $5 billion into the development and making of the armor, while Luke still fell far short of even $1 billion. Since he was able to save so much money, Luke was nice to Tony. $5 billion was almost as much as what Titanium Phone Company was worth right now. In the end, Jenny said blithely, the company is currently valued at $50 billion. Of course, some exaggerated estimates put it at $70 billion. Luke. Alright, when it came to business, it was better for him not to make blind guesses. He couldn't compare with Jenny's talent and eye for money. Even if it was just an estimate, if Titanium Phone Company was really worth $50 billion, there would definitely be people who wanted it. The problem then wouldn't be the $50 billion figure, but how to complete the acquisition. After all, it was practically impossible to pay $50 billion in cash. After considering it from several angles, the buyer and seller wouldn't make such a ridiculous deal. In fact, Titanium Phone Company was already very strong. After all, their R&D costs were practically zero and they had more than one generation of phone technology. The company had easily skipped the initial stages, which were the most painful for most companies pursuing any venture. Naturally, current R&D wasn't entirely dependent on Luke. He only set a research direction and solved some particularly tricky issues, before leaving the rest to the phone company's technology department. As an excellent capitalist, CEO Jenny naturally wouldn't pay the researchers for nothing, and would do her best to squeeze out as much value from them as possible. Other cell phone companies entering the market now simply meant that the market was expanding one step further. If they wanted to directly impact Titanium Phone Company's profits, they would still have to wait until next year at least. Today was nothing more than Jenny looking for encouragement from Luke as usual. It was her habit to personally confirm that he supported every major undertaking. After that, they talked about personal things, like Jenny's father. Jenny had indeed achieved the objective which Luke had described to her at the beginning. When her father saw her now, he subconsciously lowered his head. After all, in front of a daughter who earned more than 10 times what he had ever made in his entire life, and who continued to crush him, he didn't have much confidence. To put it bluntly, he wouldn't be qualified to lead Titanium Phone Company now because he had too little money. However, the relationship between father and daughter had conversely mellowed. It wasn't because her father had given in, but because Jenny was standing high enough for her to see a lot of things. She still couldn't get over her past conflict with her father, but she was no longer so torn up over it. As for that young stepmother of hers, the woman no longer dared to complain about Jenny in front of her father. That was because she wasn't qualified. After hearing Jenny out for the whole afternoon, Luke didn't return home until that night, and he continued to ponder the phone company. Given the current situation, as long as Jenny didn't suddenly do something stupid, Titanium Phone Company would slowly and steadily become a gigantic corporation in less than 10 years at least. That wasn't the point. The important point was that the Little Green Man phone operating system which Jenny had released, which was the Android system in his previous life, had successfully become the first choice for other phone manufacturers. That was because Titanium Phone Company hadn't developed its own system, so the other manufacturers would naturally choose the Little Green Man system, which could be considered a bargain. Starting from this month, the distribution of low and mid-tier smartphones would expand worldwide at an explosive rate, along with the Little Green Man system. As a R&D researcher, it was too easy for Luke to obtain information through the Green Man system. Also, this thing was an open-source program, and would pass through the hands of many technicians in many companies. If something happened in the future, nobody would suspect him. In the wake of increasing smartphone users, the advent of the Internet era was at hand, and there would be few information blind spots for Luke in this world. At that time, the multifaceted system would be his eyes, the star of justice his body, and he would be the brain. Also factoring in his setup in Europe and South America, Luke couldn't help but sigh at how useful money was. In the morning, Selena watched the news expressionlessly. Only after the news was over did she turn around and look at Luke. Batman injured hundreds of gang members in Detroit last night. Do you have anything to say to me? Pondering for 2 seconds, Luke nodded. You could say he's outsourcing his work. Selina was stumped. Outsourcing? Thinking for a moment, she asked suspiciously, so, that person isn't Batman? Luke nodded with a smile. It shouldn't be. Because that's the Star of Justice clone. The real Batman is in front of you. I'm not lying, Luke murmured inwardly. Selina stopped asking. It wasn't like Luke couldn't outsource Batman's identity. For example, hadn't a certain money-hungry mercenary pretended to be V to go to Swamp Park and fight over 100 professional hitmen? As for other people, Mindy's father, Damon, could also take this job. Luke had gone out on so many private jobs, who knew how many friends he had outside. It wasn't too hard to find someone to play Batman. As for the Batman suit, it was even simpler. This thing could even be controlled remotely. That might not work in an intense battle, but it was very hard for anyone to wrest control of it. The armor also had a powerful arc reactor. If necessary, it wouldn't be too hard to blow it up. Selina didn't think there were any idiots who would dare cross a pacifist who could blow up the armor remotely. After this dupe, dealing with Selina in the future would be a lot easier. After all, a certain mercenary had already played V. Plus, almost all of Luke's other identities worked in the shadows, like White Wolf, Big Dipper, and Puncher, and he didn't tell her all the details. These aliases didn't need to be as high-profile as Batman, they worked in secret and would never go on the news. With a good partner like the Star of Justice, Luke's days on the surface were a lot smoother. Even if he stayed at home and didn't go out, he never stopped earning experience and credit points every night. In any case, he only slept for 2 hours a day, and could get an even earlier start in the day. Now that he was used to multitasking, most of his police work during the day no longer affected his clone. An ordinary person only had 24 hours a day, but with his clone, Luke had over 36 hours. It seemed that it wouldn't be too hard to level up in the future. As he mumbled to himself, Luke looked at the system interface. Host's experience, 356,000/500,000. Credit, 550,000. In just a few days, he had earned more than 40,000 experience and credit points from his clone fighting in a few major cities. However, the battle had consumed thousands of experience and credit points, so his net gain was just short of 40,000. Even though it consumed a lot of credit, the clone was still much faster than Luke at earning points since it could switch between multiple aliases and Luke didn't need to worry about his real identity being exposed. Coupled with the points from Selina and the occasional extra income from Mindy, Luke looked forward to his level-ups in the future. The number of experience points required to level up increased after every 5 levels. After level 20, it would start at 1 million, and after level 25, it would start at 10 million. If it wasn't for the fact that he received an extra stat point for every 5 levels, it would be a very, very long time before all of Luke's stats reached 80. But it now seemed that it wouldn't take him too long before he reached level 25. When it slowed down was probably when the era of superheroes would arrive. Holding the empty grenade launcher, Master Wayne walked over to Doomsday. Looking at its resentful expression, he was delighted. All Kryptonian monsters should die. He raised his head slightly, and met Superman's gaze. Master Wayne smiled kindly. He wasn't in a hurry to kill Superman now, because a very suitable tool had appeared that could pose a certain threat to Superman. Thinking that, he nodded at the tool next to him. "You're quite good at tying knots." Luke, the tool, was scanning the changes in Doomsday's body stats after it was affected by kryptonite. Hearing that, he praised Master Wayne. "Your 3 shots were beautiful too." He wasn't lying. To fire grenades at that speed to disrupt and restrict Doomsday's movements at a critical moment required a high level of marksmanship and a huge amount of guts. Some shooting champions might not even have the courage to pull the trigger after missing 1 shot. After all, there was a huge difference between a competition target that couldn't fight back and a near-invincible Doomsday. Hearing such business flattery, Master Wayne straightforwardly extended an invitation. "Shall we talk in a few days?" Luke said, "No problem." Superman, who was hovering in the air, frowned and felt uneasy. Why did these two guys look like they were on the same wavelength? Even someone as powerful as he was couldn't help but look at the battle goddess, Diana, who was nearby. Did he have to team up with her? Forget it, it wouldn't be good if Lois found out. The battle goddess was in a good mood. She didn't have a complicated relationship with the three people present, and with her strength, she didn't need to rope anyone in immediately. Besides, she was a beautiful woman. It wasn't that she needed a man to curry favor with her, but if she showed a little familiarity, it was very easy for men to lose their sense of propriety. After her first love 100 years ago, she had never thought of finding a second boyfriend. Thus, her thoughts were very simple, and she didn't notice Superman's conflicted expression. Walking over to Luke, she asked the question she was most concerned about. "Can I take back what's mine now?" "Anytime, Your Highness." Luke then said to Master Wayne, "Don't take out the spear for now. I don't want this thing to come back to life after a few days." Master Wayne agreed and didn't dwell on the fact that the princess could retrieve her weapon before he could. Of course, technically speaking, the kryptonite in the spear was something he had pilfered from Lex. The only thing Master Wayne had made was the staff. The spear really couldn't be considered his weapon. He thought of another question. What about the body? Luke looked at Superman and the battle goddess. "If you have a way to completely destroy it, I don't mind leaving it to you." Before they could reply, he gave them a more detailed request. "Before it's destroyed, it's best to cut it into pieces and destroy the head first. One Lex is enough. I don't want anyone else with underhanded thoughts to get their hands on it." They frowned. That was a little problematic. Fighting wasn't a problem for them, but to cut up the other party into pieces and grind their bones to dust after killing them? Sorry, that really went against their worldview. But what Luke said made sense, since Lex had already helped them test the possibility. The body of a Kryptonian really could be turned into a super weapon. Although they could monitor the remains of the Kryptonian spaceship, there was more than one way in this universe to use the body. It was like people telling you that it was very important to take out the sh*t, or the entire city would be filled with the smell. Most people wouldn't do it, especially when there were other candidates available. Superman and Diana looked at Luke. Luke glanced at Master Wayne next to him. This guy was really D*MN super paranoid. With just a few words, he suspected that Luke was planning to do something bad with the body. Well, Master Wayne was actually half right. The thing he was wrong about was that Luke wasn't going to use the body to do something bad. That was because he had enough other technology. He didn't need this body at all if he wanted to do something bad. Luke nodded. "Then I'll get rid of it with Batman." The three of them stared at him in surprise. Luke said, "I don't think he minds getting a little dirty and tired." In response, the battle goddess, who was practically spotless, looked at Superman for a moment. She then looked at Master Wayne, who was covered in dust, and then at Luke's mottled armor, and couldn't say anything. Her gear was something that her parents had given her. What could she do about it? Since Luke, this intermediary whom all three big shots could accept, was the one who had spoken, Superman and Master Wayne, who might have caused a scene, just exchanged a few looks before they went their separate ways. Master Wayne was worried about the problem of moving the body, and said that he could help. Luke chuckled. A small virtual screen appeared on his wrist, and he issued a few instructions. Less than a minute later, a black Quinjet-like plane descended from the sky. Under Luke's remote control, several highly lifelike androids moved Doomsday's huge body onto the plane. Luke followed the body to the open back door. "You know how to contact me. Come to my base in 3 days, and we'll destroy it together." Master Wayne frowned and started to think of various ways in which he could kill this dangerous person in front of him. "Okay, I will." Luke didn't turn around. He simply gave the order for the plane to take off right away. It wasn't that Master Wayne wanted to kill him, Luke's intuition for danger had only reacted slightly. Master Wayne didn't necessarily want to take him down, he was just cooking up a contingency plan in passing. As a master contingency planner himself, Old Master Luke knew that this was just a habit, or OCD. Watching the plane leave, Master Wayne didn't move for a moment, and then murmured, "This guy is very rich." As a big capitalist, he knew too well how useful money and power could be in this country. As for how formidable a combo of money, power, and superpowers were, Lex had already given them a negative example. As long as the opportunity presented itself, this combo was enough to create a monster like Doomsday. Superman was scary, but this god, who wanted to be human, had his weaknesses. But this Dark Knight really seemed a little like him. Master Wayne had to admit that they were very similar in terms of money and methods. Would he be delighted and treat him like a brother? Hee, how naive. What people hated the most was a fake version of themselves. You didn't hate yourself because you were you. Being strict with others and treating yourself leniently was normal for most people. Thus, the wicked liked friends with moral bottom lines. Philandering girls liked to have conservative best friends. This way, there would be fewer people around them who would muscle in on their business. But Master Wayne's musings were quickly interrupted by a reminder from the butler. "If you are still there in another 30 seconds, you'll be on the military's live broadcast." Turning his head to see several points of light in the sky in the distance, Master Wayne heaved a sigh and got into the Batmobile which the butler had sent over. A few seconds later, the Batmobile changed form and flew away from the scene. Tanks could fly. That was a basic operation. At most, it wasn't as fast as the Batplane. What was left for the American military, who was in a hurry to clean up the mess, was a vast wilderness filled with bomb craters and burning vegetation. A month after the incident with Doomsday, on a rainy night in Gotham, Luke stood in one corner on the rooftop of a building and looked down at the city lights. His armor was buffeted by the cold fall rain and the night wind. The cape fluttered behind him like silk. The optical camouflage gave it a strange appearance as it switched between black and gray. "Back then, you didn't say you were going to make such a big fuss." A low and hoarse voice rang out. Without looking back, Luke closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "This is the smell of sin. That's no reason for you to mess around in my territory." There was anger in the voice. "Also, Metropolis is right next to us. Why are you being so petty?" Luke finally turned around and looked at another figure a few meters away. His black cape fluttered in the wind, and he had pointy ears on his head and a bat symbol on his chest. It was none other than Master Wayne. "It can't be helped. I can't afford to offend Superman." He sighed and stated the fact helplessly. "Besides, I think we have something in common." Master Wayne fell silent. He had seen a lot of shameless people, even those who didn't care about their lives. But this was the first person whom he had fought alongside to beat up a supervillain who dared to admit to his face that he had come to poach his job because he couldn't beat Superman. But Master Wayne couldn't say anything. At the very least, he hadn't found any evidence of the other party doing anything bad. In fact, Master Wayne only had misgivings, not suspicions. The only conflict between the two parties was that, the other party was too dutiful as a vigilante. Speaking of which, Knight had helped out during the incident with Doomsday, so Master Wayne owed him a favor. Without concrete evidence, he really couldn't do anything to Knight. Superman. That person had wrecked a lot of Gotham City, and employees of Wayne Industries at all levels had been killed or injured in that tragedy. After a brief silence, he could only snort. "Be careful of the government. They're not me." With that, he jumped off and glided away. Luke was amused. Master Wayne's temperament was a little like that of a tycoon. But the government wasn't a big problem. What Master Wayne didn't know was that Luke knew far more about this world than he could expect. The reason Luke hadn't carried out any targeted surveillance or investigations on the three big shots was because he knew it wasn't possible. As long as the paranoid Master Wayne found any signs, he would immediately feel threatened. If Master Wayne found out, it might become a reason for him to convince Superman and the Battle Goddess to team up, which would be more trouble for Knight. If Luke didn't have the system's good and evil panel, he would have done the same. In this world, no matter who you offended, you shouldn't offend the three big shots, especially when it came to sensitive matters like poking into their private affairs. Apart from that, they had nothing to say if Luke did anything else. For example, infiltrating the government. None of the three big shots had a good impression of the government. Even the most saintly Superman, who had been stabbed in the back with a nuclear missile, wasn't stupid enough to think that the government didn't have a choice back then. In this world, if Superman wanted to know something, it wasn't hard for him to find out, it was just that he didn't want to know. Luke had real dream and pheromone control, but rarely probed into other people's inner thoughts. No beauty in life could withstand the contamination of the dark side of the human heart. It was just like a joke in his previous life, to fans, their idols didn't sh*t. Everybody knew that this was impossible, but who would be willing to link their idol to sh*t? Old Master Luke, who had hundreds of millions of fans when all his aliases were put together, wouldn't be happy either. Since Superman didn't want to know, Luke naturally went all out and planted bugs in the government. Controlling the government in just a few months was impossible, but it wasn't hard to tip them off and slow them down at critical moments. For example, in the past month, Lex had spent money to bribe a lot of government officials for him to be diagnosed as having mental issues. In the end, Luke just secretly gave Master Wayne a little bit of help, and Lex was sent to Arkham Asylum. Wayne Enterprises had long been providing this hospital with medical supplies and security technology. Luke was also an anonymous donor to this mental hospital. Master Wayne wanted Lex to suffer, but Luke planned to have Lex put on a normal death performance. Also, Lex had been talking nonsense recently. Luke wouldn't be frightened by a few fierce words from a bad guy, but Lex's words seemed to imply something. So, he decided to make a personal trip to Arkham without letting Master Wayne know. Otherwise, if a few of Arkham's supervillains took turns dying normal deaths, Master Wayne would look for Luke for a chat once more. Stealing some business from this market in Gotham City was a good choice, and Luke could earn more points in passing. Luke's pilfering was just one of the things that depressed Master Wayne. Also, Knight's equipment looked 50% similar to his. Those who had never seen Master Wayne would naturally think that Knight was Batman, and those who had seen him would think that Master Wayne had replaced his armor. Given that they had the same targets and produced similar results, there were already rumors that Batman had an impersonator for a partner. If it wasn't for the fact that they often appeared in two places at the same time, and Luke had made it clear to GCPD that he was the Dark Knight, Master Wayne would really have to enjoy the honor of being two people. Thinking that, Luke crossed his arms and stood quietly on the roof corner. What belongs to Master Wayne is mine. I used to be Batman, after all. Moreover, there was the copyright fee for Master Wayne. If he didn't make up some excuse, that guy would definitely be suspicious of Luke again. But during the fight against Doomsday, Master Wayne's combat ability had been pitifully weak. If it wasn't for those last 3 grenades and the fact that he had created the kryptonite spear in advance, he could be removed from the trio of big shots altogether. What Master Wayne lacked the most at the moment was a super energy source like the arc reactor. With that, it would only take a few months for Wayne Enterprises to make a suit on the level of the Mark II. So, Luke would get rid of Lex and then give Master Wayne a few finished reactors. At that time, Master Wayne probably wouldn't pay attention to Lex's death. Making up his mind, Luke jumped off the roof and glided hundreds of meters through the rain. His figure gradually faded and disappeared. Lex died an unexpected yet understandable death. Recently, he had been muttering that something was coming, and would imitate the ringing of a phone. But one night, while he was lying against the cell door as he mumbled to himself, he suddenly banged his head against it several times. Then, he died. It was normal for someone with a cracked head to die. Lex didn't have any family, at least, none who could help hold a funeral for him. Thus, the government spent Lex's money to help hold an expensive and extravagant funeral for him, and then buried him in a very expensive cemetery. What was it like to sleep in a coffin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars and in a cemetery worth millions of dollars? Sorry, Lex didn't get the chance to experience it for himself. On the day of the burial, Luke turned the guy's body to dust. Luke had obtained some peculiar information from the military special force that had entered the remains of the Kryptonian spaceship to capture Lex. The soldiers had seen a silver humanoid monster with 2 horns on its head fiddling with 3 cubes in front of Lex. It wasn't until they charged in that the humanoid monster disappeared like a phantom, leaving Lex behind. Before he killed Lex, Luke had asked him about it in Real Dream, but Lex only said that he felt a mysterious existence had locked onto Earth, and that it would come. As Earth's protector, Superman would definitely have to fight it. Luke could only roll his eyes when he heard that. Are you sure this mysterious existence isn't coming here just to die? Although there were definitely mysterious existences in the universe who could fight Superman, very few could defeat him. After Krypton was destroyed and turned to cosmic dust, there was practically nowhere to find the kryptonite that was Superman's only weakness. Anyone who was stupid enough to come to Earth to be beaten up was either a lowlife or a crackhead. After Lex was discovered to have committed suicide, Luke passed on the information to some of his partners whom he had secretly influenced. They had been prepared beforehand, and took a huge bite out of the fattest bits of Lex Corporation. It was inconvenient for Luke to personally take action, nor was there any need for him to do so. It was good to throw it to these hounds so that they wouldn't be as resistant to mental suggestions. Luke's real rewards were the secret labs, backup databases and assets that Lex had never revealed. Luke, who had spent too much on building the internet, was greatly relieved. With this windfall, he would no longer have to worry about looking for fat sheep to slaughter in the future. However, whether it was the backup databases or hidden assets, they were just extra gains that weren't worth mentioning. What Luke really paid attention to were the documents which Lex had left behind after he was caught. The most eye-catching thing in them was 3 cubes, which matched the statements of the soldiers who had captured Lex. So, the 3 cubes, and the humanoid monster with horns, were the mysterious existence that Lex was talking about. That was Luke's guess. Lex's papers were a mess, and Luke couldn't analyze much. If Lex really knew the origins of that mysterious existence, he would have told Luke in Real Dream. Clearly, he was just an accidental messenger, and not some child of destiny. Could a child of destiny be resurrected from ashes? Thinking that, Luke couldn't help but laugh. If Mr. Luthor Jr. really were revived, he would be very happy in Space 2 as a test subject. 2 months later, 2 cars arrived at Bale Manor on the outskirts of Gotham. There was no need for the drivers to get out and press the intercom, as the metal gate automatically opened. The 2 cars stopped in front of the main building, and Master Wayne and Diana got out of their respective cars. When they reached the open front door, a cute mechanical voice rang out. "Guests, please follow little Q to the rear courtyard. Master is waiting for you there." Their gazes fell on the cute white robot with a monitor for a face and a pillar-like body. The monitor had, on it, and the cute mechanical voice rang out again. "Handsome sir, pretty sister, this way, please." Diana's eyes lit up. "Oh, how fun. Master Wayne, why am I, sir, while this old lady is, sister?" Bale, this guy, his intentions were clear. "Little question, pretty sister, I'm not a toy. I'm Master's little helper." Diana found that even more interesting. "Really? Then what can you do? Apart from leading the way." An expression appeared on little Q's monitor. "I can't demonstrate here, or I'll break the furniture." Diana asked, then why don't you show me in the backyard? Little question, okay, pretty sister. They passed through the main building and entered the rear courtyard. A flock of crows cawed in the trees 100 meters away from the manor. Little question, it's those noisy guys again. Silent mode, minimum rapid fire mode. 2 small gun barrels suddenly popped out on both sides of the pillar-like body. Streaks of white light as fine as needles flashed, and the noisy crows in the trees fell. The world instantly quieted down. Whose household appliance has a silent mode like this? Both of them rolled their eyes inwardly. But the battle goddess, who had treated little Q as a toy, also knew that this cute thing was more than enough to kill someone, especially an ordinary person. Given the speed and accuracy of the shots just now, it wouldn't be a problem for little Q to wipe out a special force team. It had to be pointed out that more than 10 of the crows had also been in the air. It was already terrifying that little Q could hit moving, agile targets that were far smaller than a human body. At that moment, Luke's voice rang out not far away. "Hey, you're not here just to tease my housekeeper, are you?" Diana smiled and picked up her pace. "Are you sure it's a housekeeper and not some hitman?" Luke nodded. "Little Q, some snacks for your pretty sister." "Black tea? Coffee?" "Diana, black tea." Master Wayne was silent. He simply nodded in agreement at Luke's coffee. They sat down at a small table, and Diana casually chatted with Luke about life in the last few months. They talked about the places she had been, what art exhibitions she had seen, and how public order there was good. Master Wayne didn't interrupt, because a certain guy who had stolen a lot of his business knew everything about Gotham. There was no need to make small talk at all. Less than 2 minutes later, little Q returned with a small dining cart. Both Diana and Master Wayne were stunned and they saw the 3 tiers full of small snacks. Master Wayne subconsciously calculated how many calories this much food contained. He was very strict with his diet, or his body wouldn't be able to withstand his intense work at night. It was only after he used 1 dose of Life 1 recently that old Master Wayne felt like he had returned to his youth. It wasn't easy to obtain this sort of health, so he cherished it. Diana, on the other hand, was truly surprised at how efficient little Q was. There were more than 50 portions on the tea stand, all neatly arranged. Even if this had been set up by a real person, they might not necessarily be able to complete everything and bring them over in 2 minutes. Thinking that, she couldn't help but stroke the top of little Q's cute monitor. Little Q is really capable. Thank you for the compliment, pretty sister. After that, afternoon tea officially began. Luke's manor was pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and only the facade had been renovated. It still looked old. The old manor was overgrown with weeds and bushes. Under the gloomy sky that was the most common in Gotham, it really looked like a haunted house in a horror film. It was a good thing that little Q had taken down the crows, or this place would appear even more haunted. However, Master Wayne, who also lived in the wilderness, was clearly very used to this scenery. Diana didn't pay attention to the scenery at all, and the 3 of them enjoyed afternoon tea. Without any bad guys in front of him, Master Wayne could still remain calm. He simply enjoyed his coffee unhurriedly and picked up a small pastry every now and then for a small taste. Diana clearly didn't have the same concerns. She casually plucked pastries off of the tea stand, and was clearly partial to the top 2 tiers of sweets. Just nice. Luke mainly ate the savory food on the lowest tier, so the 2 of them enjoyed themselves. Just like that, half an hour passed, and Luke and Diana finished most of the afternoon tea. Taking a hot towel from little Q and wiping his hands clean, Luke said to Master Wayne, who was drinking coffee to stave off his hunger, "Okay, we've had our afternoon tea. Let's get down to business." Master Wayne's identity as the person in charge of Wayne Enterprises was quite eye-catching. Unless it was something serious, these 2 big shots wouldn't come together to visit Luke. Diana enjoyed her salon tea and had no intention of saying anything. It was a pleasant surprise to be able to enjoy an upgraded version of English afternoon tea here. In particular, she didn't have to care about drawing other people's attention here, and could eat as much as she wanted. Although nobody in a cafe would care how much she ate, it still wasn't very comfortable to be looked at with surprise and curiosity. Master Wayne put down his coffee cup, which was almost empty, and coughed. "It's about the flying monster that self-destructed in front of us last time." Luke nodded and gestured for him to continue. Of course, he knew about the monster. He had even guessed something of its origin from Lex's documents. But it was inconvenient for him to say anything. Otherwise, how could he explain how he had seen Lex's documents, when Master Wayne's men had taken them away immediately? Luke was the one who had made copies of the documents before he sent Lex on his way. Master Wayne continued, "There are more and more of them. I've killed more than 10 recently. They roam Gotham City and Metropolis almost every night." Luke added, "I've killed 23. Diana's hand that was holding the teacup paused. She had previously gone to Europe to relax after the battle. It was only because she received a warning about an attack on Paradise Island that she returned to America to look for help. Compared with the diligent Batman and Knight, she seemed a little too lazy." The battle goddess quickly dismissed this thought. What a joke. She was very normal. How could she compare with psychos who enjoyed beating up bad guys? Thankfully, these two mentally ill people didn't care what other people thought as they continued talking. Diana's homeland was attacked by the same monsters, led by their leader. Luke finally sat up straight and leaned forward slightly to listen attentively. Old Master Wayne said, "This leader is called Steppenwolf. He wanted to take over Earth thousands of years ago. Once those 3 cubes are combined, they will become a complete mother box that can transform and control the environment of the entire Earth." Luke asked, "Like General Zod's Kryptonian spaceship?" Master Wayne nodded. "It works differently, but the consequences for us are similar. Earth will become his home ground." Luke looked at Diana, who had been silent the whole time. "How's it going at home?" Diana's expression finally changed. "There were a lot of casualties, and Steppenwolf stole the box that was being kept there. The other box is with the Atlanteans, but they've retreated into the deep ocean, and it's hard to contact them. The box left to mankind was secretly buried by their ancestors, and its whereabouts are unknown." Luke leaned back in his chair. "So, what are you going to do?" Given Master Wayne's personality and controlling nature, he definitely wouldn't get someone else to come up with an idea. He definitely had a plan. Sure enough, Master Wayne appreciated Luke going along with him. The moment Luke opened his mouth, he asked the question that Master Wayne wanted to answer, which was great. "We need more fighting power." Luke was surprised. "We do." As if he knew what Luke was thinking, Master Wayne nodded firmly. "We do, because Superman has gone home." Luke was truly surprised. "What?" Master Wayne had been staring at his expression the whole time, and only now did he feel that there was nothing wrong. Knight probably wasn't monitoring Superman, or he would have known that Superman had gone off-world with the excuse of a business trip. This was something that Lois had told Master Wayne herself, and he had been watching Superman the whole time, which was why he had noticed something fishy. Luke really hadn't checked on Superman. To be honest, it was a very boring thing to do. There were no security issues with Superman at all. Given the sort of enemies he dealt with, the world was sure to know very quickly if something happened. It was impossible for there to be no news of a few cities being destroyed. As for Superman's girlfriend, Lois, and his mother, Martha, Luke had earned Superman's favor by providing them with nanosuits. Master Wayne thought that Luke didn't work in Metropolis, but Luke had in fact beaten up a few big-shot gang bosses and crippled them on the spot. Superman never ever thought of having a chat with Luke. No matter how saintly he was, he couldn't, for the sake of a few heinous criminals, argue with the great benefactor who had saved his mother's life. In any case, nobody had died. These big-shot gang bosses were quite powerful. After they were crippled, they immediately had their loyal lackeys take them away. Thus, Master Wayne didn't notice anything unusual. Now, he had to take the initiative to tell Luke what he had learned about Superman. He said that there's something he needs to find out, and that he'll be away for a while. He's been gone for more than a month. Luke scratched his head. He hadn't considered the possibility that Superman would leave Earth. It had to be pointed out that Superman was already so old, and had never gone on a trip to outer space from Earth. It could only be said that human habit was just that incomprehensible. That was because ruling out certain predetermined standards before thinking about a situation was a more practical and efficient choice so that people didn't have to refresh their understanding once again. It was like when you wouldn't immediately think of a girl with long, wavy hair as cute, except on special occasions. By the same logic, Luke had never considered that Superman might leave since the odds of that happening were too low, while the chance that Superman would run into an enemy that only he could deal with was even lower. But even if the odds were 1 in a billion, it could still happen. In any case, Luke never had Superman as a teammate back home, and Luke was the one who took the lead in taking down a bunch of supervillains. Thus, he quickly adjusted his mindset. Okay, it seems we really need a plan. After confirming that Luke wasn't interested in Superman, Master Wayne was relieved. He wasn't Superman, who dropped everything to save people. His ordinary life and Batman were two separate things. He was also a rich man, a big capitalist, and a member of the upper class, who had heard some talk of what Luke had done under his identity as Bruce Bale. Master Wayne was confident he could take Superman or the Dark Knight one-on-one. If they started working together and played off each other's strengths, that would be a headache for Master Wayne. That was because he realized that Luke was much better at conducting himself than he was. Or should he say, he wasn't arrogant. Even Master Wayne was a little embarrassed to target Luke because of Life 1, the nanosuit, and the arc reactor, let alone Superman. After all, Luke had given too much. Diana, who was the only one who didn't need anything, seemed very satisfied with Luke's exquisite and considerate afternoon tea today. This wasn't a small matter. For a battle goddess who wasn't short of money, strength, gear, looks, and lifespan, a man who could impress her was the most precious. That was because most men weren't even qualified to curry favor with her. Superman was qualified, but he had a girlfriend, and their feelings were real. Master Wayne was also qualified, but he really didn't move as quickly as Luke. Seeing that Luke wasn't going to take the lead, Master Wayne was secretly relieved. If Luke wanted to steal the position, the chances of Diana objecting weren't high, so it would be 2-1. Master Wayne definitely wouldn't stand a chance in a fight against both of them at once. Now that he had heard the best answer, his frown disappeared. There are 4 very powerful existences in the classified files that Lex obtained. He then gestured at Diana. One of them is Diana. Luke put on a show of being interested. They definitely wouldn't be weak if they are in the same files as Diana. But how do we know they're trustworthy? I like that. Master Wayne raised an eyebrow. I've already investigated. At the very least, they still have a lot of goodwill toward humanity. Luke nodded confidently. Then what do you need me to do? Master Wayne said, I already made contact with one. He didn't agree to join us, but he didn't refuse either. So, it's best if we go together to see the other 2. Luke rubbed his chin. Will that increase the chance of them joining us? Master Wayne said, the first one I found, Arthur Curry, should be half human, half Atlantean. When he said that, he couldn't help but glance at the battle goddess, who was drinking tea leisurely. Diana snorted and finally said, all right, I'm also half Amazon. Luke looked astonished on the surface, but was secretly amused. He felt that he had done the right thing by not jumping out. Look at Master Wayne, who got to the bottom of a person's background and even revealed it in their presence. He could really draw aggro. Luke often did this back home, but basically only with the enemy, while he saved his teammates the embarrassment. Should Master Wayne be praised for being a righteous, straight man? Of course, after feeling amused and slightly surprised, he immediately said to Diana, "Then you must be the most beautiful woman in the Amazon." Although she was unhappy about someone poking around in her private life, Diana's lips couldn't help but curve up. This person was really good with his words. Master Wei, D*MN flatterer. Thanks to Luke's flattery, everybody tacitly skipped over the subtle but inevitable topic of mixed bloods. Luke had no objections to roping people in, he had even been waiting for Master Wayne to catch up. Master Wayne was looking for teammates purely to fight, but Luke really wanted to see these teammates pass the system's assessment. After being here for half a year, what he regretted was that he hadn't earned enough of a favorable impression with Superman. Unless a coercive ability like mind control was involved, it was almost impossible for a teammate in the system to betray him. It really wasn't easy to reach that level of trust. Luke had obtained so many teammates back home thanks to over 10 years of an accumulated reputation. In the wake of the Bat Squad, most newbies had the experiences of their seniors as a reference point, and coupled with the impact of Batman and Knight being deified for years, they passed the system's assessment more quickly. Here in the DC universe, he was still a newbie hero of unknown origins. Even though Superman was grateful to him, he still had some doubts. But Luke was patient. Compared with how he had started from scratch back home, he was at least a high-level big shot here with abundant resources. It really wasn't hard for him to win over his teammates. He was confident he could obtain lists of the battle goddesses and Superman's abilities within 5 years, that is, if they were available to be learned. Master Wayne. That was a mystery. After all, the thoughts of mental patients varied widely. They might pass the system's assessment tomorrow, or they might still be stubborn and doubt everything for years. Doomsday didn't have a list of abilities. The very considerate system had explained, crude manufactured lifeforms is almost equal to animals. To put it simply, the weighting in the system was Earthlings, alien humanoids, human intelligent lifeforms like Thor and vampires, animals, manufactured lifeforms like Doomsday and the Blood God experimental. Although alien humanoids weren't protected by the system, they could still be considered to be the same kind to a certain extent. Doomsday, who had been created out of General Zod's body, and the Blood God experimental, who was a human transformed, were definitely different. Luke felt quite a bit of regret. Putting aside the hard body that could withstand a nuclear weapon, Doomsday's ability to absorb energy to strengthen its body would have been a perfect match for intermediate evolution. If Luke combined the two, he might be able to come up with a new ability to evolve by absorbing energy. To use Doomsday as the upper threshold, even if Luke had just 50% or even 30% of this ability, he could become a player on Superman's level. Even if he couldn't beat Superman with the weak version of this ability, he could completely crush anyone below him. This was already much stronger than Luke's current threshold. He hadn't obtained a list of Doomsday's abilities, so Superman's out-of-print list of abilities was most likely the only one Luke would be able to get. For this reason, Luke had to protect Earth. He just didn't know how strong that Steppenwolf was. If he was on the same level as Doomsday, that would be a little troublesome. Steppenwolf wasn't a Kryptonian creature and wasn't weak in the face of a kryptonite weapon. Killing him was going to be a pain. The three of them took Master Wayne's private jet to Central City. Compared with Gotham, Central City was a little better, at least, it wasn't as illustrious in that the number and quality of supervillains that appeared every year weren't as prominent as what Gotham had. But that was all. Thanks to brain drain and a high unemployment rate, special services and drug trafficking had increasingly become the means of making a living at the bottom. Apart from neighborhoods where the middle and upper-class communities gathered, old factories and warehouses could be seen everywhere in the city. Nobody cared about these, since there were no jobs to go around anyway. In an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts close to some rail tracks, Diana sat on a small bar stool and tapped the ground with her foot. "Are you sure that the young man won't be angry if we barge into his house like this?" Master Wayne relaxed in his chair. Being angry and being tempted are two different things. A little further away, Luke sat in a gaming chair in front of a row of black monitor screens. Bruce is right. It's like calling a beautiful woman your friend. The most polite way is the safest, but it's also the easiest way for the other party to dismiss you as a passerby. It's necessary to make a lasting first impression. Diana smiled and looked at the two Bruces. It seems that both of you have a lot in common. Luke chuckled. Don't say that. Master Wayne often makes the headlines in Gotham's tabloids. I'm just good at discovering patterns. Master Wayne, these two be asterisk stars. When did they start getting along so well? Fortunately, his watch chimed with a notification. Okay, he's back. The warehouse fell silent. Less than a minute later, there was the rattle of the lock on the door, followed by the faint creak of the door opening, and finally, the crackle of electricity. The lights in the warehouse came on, and the other monitors and appliances started to boot up. A thin and short figure with a knapsack walked around the corner into the lounge, only to see two men and a woman sitting in his home. Barry Allen. Master Wayne was using that deep, magnetic voice. I'm Bruce Wayne. Barry glared at him with his hands on his waist. You say that like you think you can break into my place and sit in my second favorite chair in the dark. Saying that, he couldn't help but look at Diana, who was looking at him with great interest. That's my third favorite. He then looked at Luke, who was the only one who wasn't looking at him, but was looking at the performance on the monitor screens. That's my number one favorite. Hearing that, Luke turned around with a smile. Your favorite K-pop girl group? They were queens for 12 years, but have fallen from the top now. Barry was stunned. You know them? Luke glanced at the screen again. A screen full of long legs is easy on the eyes. Everybody. Feeling that things were going a little off track, Master Wayne could only cough and take out prints of surveillance images. Moving on. Perhaps you might be able to explain this. Barry looked at the expensive suit, coat, leather shoes, and diamond tie clip on the other man, and felt the intense aura of the ruling class. He couldn't help but take the prints for a look. This person looks a little like me, but is definitely not me. Let me guess, it's unlikely he stole anything from you. With a faint smile on his face, Master Wayne turned around and walked over to a life-size dummy. I know you have an ability, but I'm not sure what it is. Barry said, I have a lot of abilities, like Viola, web design, sign language, gorilla sign language. Master Wayne inspected the red suit on the dummy. Is this silica-based quartz fabric? Abrasion resistant? Heat resistant? Barry, I like figure skating. Master Wayne said, this is usually used on space shuttles so that they don't burn up on re-entry. Barry, skate very intensely. Luke and Diana didn't say anything. They simply watched with smiles as Master Wayne pressed forward step by step and Barry spouted nonsense in all earnestness. Old Master Wayne was enlightened. Oh, is that so? Barry nodded quickly. Yes, whoever you're looking for, it definitely isn't me. I guarantee. Master Wayne turned around and took a few steps, his hand already in his coat. He suddenly turned around and flung out his hand. A dark gray shadow flew out of his hand and headed straight for Barry's shoulder. The next moment, even Diana felt her vision blur. Barry, who had been chattering non-stop, stopped talking and just looked down at the bat dart in his hand. Master Wayne calmly drew back his hand and returned to his elegant appearance. Barry raised his head. You're Batman? Master Wayne said, so, you're very fast. Barry smiled proudly. That's a little of an oversimplification. Master Wayne also smiled. I'm putting together a team. I need people with abilities, because a powerful enemy is coming. Realization dawned on Barry, and he raised his hand to cut Master Wayne off. Stop right there. I'm in. Master Wayne. Luke. Diana, didn't you say that it wouldn't be easy to get them to join? Didn't you say that you would have to rely on me in battle? Sure enough, men are all pigs. She couldn't help but get up from the bar stool that was Barry's third favorite chair. Really? I need people like me. Barry looked a little uncomfortable. You get it, it's hard to get along with ordinary people, and I don't have the patience. I can't understand them. Diana nodded in agreement. As someone with a demigod body, she didn't lack anything, but it did make her out of place. In the end, she found a job as a museum curator and started to come into contact with some of the most unreasonable people in the world. Only then did she feel a little more settled. It seemed that Barry had been holding back for too long. He couldn't help but complain, for example. What the heck is brunch? By the time you eat something after lining up for an hour, it's clearly lunch time. He, Luke couldn't help but laugh. He had been calm all this time, and the other three looked at him in surprise. Luke suddenly felt good about Barry. He was clearly a genius with a different mindset, which was why he felt out of place. It was like the tycoon explaining his research to ordinary researchers. What reasoning? Just think about it. Why can't you understand? Everyone else, sincerely nodding their heads, yes, we really don't understand. WTF. It was enough to make the tycoon want to flip a table. Barry, a genius that ordinary people couldn't stand, was nothing to Luke. Tony, who had a bad temper and a poisonous tongue, Ivan, and Bent, the researcher who lacked common sense, the one who invented the sick stick, if any one of them could be considered a mad scientist who had no regard for human life, Barry in comparison was far easier to deal with. Luke simply interrogated Barry. You don't have a girlfriend, right? Barry's face actually turned a little red, especially when he saw that the attention of the long-legged big sister was focused on him. He said awkwardly, well, so far, no. Luke walked over with a sympathetic expression. Don't you know that many brunch customers are actually couples with very active night lives? Barry was at a loss. That, I know. Einstein's theory of relativity explains that when you're with someone you like, an hour is like 5 minutes. Luke patted his shoulder. When you yourself see someone with a person they like, 5 minutes is like an hour. Barry, what? Einstein said that? Luke nodded confidently. Yes. Master Wayne frowned. He had read the theory of relativity before. Although he hadn't studied it in detail, Einstein hadn't explained it like that, right? The battle goddess, who still didn't understand science but knew what it was like to be hit on, said, Einstein definitely didn't say that. Everybody looked at her. Diana said, because I've heard a lot of men say that, but they already forgot middle school physics. Luke rolled his eyes at her for exposing him. It's just a joke. I just think Barry is too serious. He then patted the young man in the shoulder again. Don't worry, you'll get a girlfriend. Good luck. Barry was baffled. I'm sorry, I don't have a girlfriend. A moment later, the four of them left via a side door on the other side of the warehouse. In order not to startle Barry, Master Wayne had deliberately chosen this less frequently used side entry. In a hurry to rope in teammates, paranoid Master Wayne took Barry to his car. Barry was still holding a large pizza that had just been microwaved. He ate as he walked. Using my ability consumes a lot of energy. After that, I'll turn into a black hole. Diana couldn't help but glance at Luke. So, the only person in this team who didn't eat much was Master Wayne. Barry, this new teammate, chattered on. How many people are on this special team now? Master Wayne opened the car door remotely. Including you, 4. Barry glanced around. So, we're all here. Fine, that's not important. What's important is who the enemy is. Master Wayne said, let's talk on the plane. Okay. Barry shrugged. Right, what's your superpower? Master Wayne pondered for a moment. I'm rich. Barry was lost for words. Diana shook her head with a smile. She walked past the Benz AMG Vision Gran Turismo that was parked at the far end and headed for her own Porsche. She was also very rich. Although it wasn't as much as tens of billions, hundreds of millions of dollars was nothing. It had to be pointed out that she had survived World War I and later took up her identity as an art curator. During the war 100 years ago, oil paintings, watches, sculptures and vases were only sold for hundreds of dollars, and could even be exchanged for food and water. She had a lot of such antiques. In particular, art prices had skyrocketed in the last decade or two, and it wouldn't be a problem to sell her stash for billions of dollars. Of course, this would definitely create a huge hole in the global art market. These things were so expensive because of the hype created by various interest groups. One of the most important traits that an art piece could have in order to be worth tens of billions of dollars on the market was that it was rare. She sold one unremarkable item 8 to 10 years ago for 8 to 10 million in living expenses. From this point of view, the battle goddess wasn't the kind of person who lived extravagantly. The grandeur, history, and heritage of European luxury brands weren't worth mentioning to someone who has Zeus bloodline. In any case, the royal families of Europe combined couldn't compare with her. On the other hand, she conceded defeat when it came to modern society, which was dedicated to innovation. For example, phones were much more useful than bugles. Luke liked interacting with Barry. When he passed by Barry, he nodded sincerely. Yes, I'm rich, too. Barry, is it so great to have money? Watching Luke walk up to a Lamborghini, Barry swallowed his pizza. Fine, it really was great to have money. At the very least, he would be able to afford these 3 beautiful cars. After that, Luke and Barry worked together to upgrade the Flash suit in the new Justice League base. Don't forget, there was a young man with gray hair back home who until now couldn't use the outer nanosuit. Meanwhile, Master Wayne and Diana continued looking for their next target. The other party's condition was supposedly a little strange, so Luke declined to go with them on the grounds that a man who was too handsome might provoke the other party. Diana rolled her eyes at this lame joke. Master Wayne looked suffocated, as if to ask, "Am I not handsome enough?" It was a pity that although he was handsome, he didn't dare talk about his handsome face when compared with Bale's. Barry, on the other hand, grinned foolishly. After they met, he had fallen in love with this game. Trading these sorts of lame jokes couldn't be any more perfect for someone with extraordinary reflexes. An ordinary person would have to think for a long while before they could come up with a retort. The only thing that depressed Barry was that Luke seemed pretty quick-witted and was much more experienced than he was. But this was why he was willing to study modifications for the suit with Luke. Not only did the Justice League have all sorts of materials, it also had a new teammate whose brain wasn't any slower than his. He could learn corny jokes on the job. What was even more wonderful was that this new teammate was a big eater. He could eat many times more than Barry, and he was rich. Barry finally knew to what extent rich people could do whatever they wanted. With a call from Luke, all sorts of signature dishes from Gotham's and Metropolis' well-known restaurants would be delivered to the base by drone within 10 minutes. Barry felt like he had turned into a little bird. As long as he opened his mouth and shouted, "I'm hungry," delicious food would fall from the sky and into his mouth. It wasn't until Master Wayne and Diana returned that Barry finally broke out of this happy atmosphere. Where's our new teammate?" Master Wayne shook his head and didn't say anything as he walked over to the table. Diana explained, "We've talked, but he needs more time." Luke put down what he was working on and walked to the table. It was probably because Bruce is too good-looking too. Everybody rolled their eyes. Master Wayne couldn't help but say, "I never showed my face." Diana went in alone. Feeling like it sounded like he was passing the buck, he added, "It's not us." Actually, he still finds his current situation a little hard to accept. Luke poured him a cup of black tea. Okay, Bruce, relax. At the very least, Barry was very obedient. With one call, he came running. Obedient Barry looked at him glumly. Unfortunately, no matter how he looked at it, he was the baby brother in this team, and could only endure it. In particular, when Luke took out the tea and snacks and was clearly about to start their regular tea session, Barry instantly appeared obediently in the chair next to Luke. Diana walked over and naturally enjoyed Luke's tea service. Master Wayne and Barry had already enjoyed this treatment. Naturally, she didn't mind enjoying the same service from a teammate. After a few mouthfuls of tea, Master Wayne's gloomy mood disappeared. After all, few things went smoothly. Barry didn't count. Looking at the curious Barry, he felt that it was time to tell him everything. After all, they had failed to rope in the other two, while the three in front of him were the fixed members. They couldn't just rely on something like tacit understanding anymore. If a team didn't lay ground rules in the beginning, and things went astray in the future, they wouldn't even get the chance to redeem themselves. Luke agreed. It was better to come up with some lofty catchphrase at the beginning. Even if it was difficult to carry out in reality, or there were unspoken rules, it was still better than doing their own thing. Of course, Master Wayne was aiming his warning primarily at Luke and Barry. The battle goddess had been on the side of justice for almost a century. There was no need to worry about her becoming corrupt. Luke was rich and powerful, while Barry's superpower was practically incomprehensible to ordinary people. If they really turned evil, they would be even more terrifying than those lunatics in Arkham. Thankfully, Luke was a civilized and easygoing person. Not only wasn't he resentful, he casually helped to translate some of what Master Wayne was saying for the newbie, Barry. Master Wayne's head hurt a little. Although that's what I meant, your explanation is too unseemly. But he couldn't deny it, in case Barry really did misunderstand. In any case, I'm not the one who's making it sound that bad. Whatever. Master Wayne could only comfort himself that way. Nobody had any objections. Luke even raised his hand. I agree. Diana simply smiled and waved. Same here. Seeing that, Barry raised his hand high. Same here. Master Wayne's feelings were a little complicated. It was really convenient to have a professional sidekick or prop. But seeing how considerate this sidekick was, it was clear that the latter knew how he thought, which wasn't a good thing. However, in the face of a powerful enemy, Master Wayne didn't have time to think about this for now. He could only proceed with the next phase. He swiped the surface of the tablet, and a photo of an African-American man appeared on the monitor next to the table. Victor Stone, a talented young scientist. On the surface, he died in an accident, but in fact. He switched to another image, and a person with a mostly robotic face and one glowing red eye appeared. He probably became like this due to another accident. Barry was enlightened. That's really cool. Fine, that's too bad. Master Wayne looked at him in agreement. That's right. A bystander might think he looks cool like this, but it definitely isn't a great experience for him, which is why he isn't easy to deal with. After introducing failure number 2, he switched to another image. It was of a wild-looking long-haired man with a black tattoo. Arthur Curry. He's half Atlantean, half human. He can come and go freely in the ocean. He doesn't seem to like coming ashore, but we should still have a chance. Barry couldn't refrain from exclaiming, "Wow," when he heard this. He was quite curious about these superhumans. After all, the three people next to him just said that money was their superpower. After all, given Barry's abilities and physique, he definitely wouldn't be their main player. As a support member, he had plenty of time to watch from the side. In any case, he could figure out a lot of things in a second. However, Barry still asked, "Will we be fighting in the ocean?" That might not be good for me. Master Wayne shook his head. I don't know, but Steppenwolf isn't an aquatic being, and those parademons under him would find it difficult to fight in the ocean as well. So, it's very likely we'll be fighting on land. Barry said, then, there should be a limit to what this Arthur Curry can do, right? Diana said, that's only if we're battling in the ocean. In any case, he's an Atlantean. Fine, he's a mixed blood, but he's stronger than most superhumans. As a demigod, she naturally knew how exaggerated his overall abilities were. He didn't need any training to fight, but if he did get training, he would be a powerful warrior at the very least. It wouldn't be a problem for him to beat up 3 to 5 of Master Wayne. Barry nodded, his trademark goofy grin in place as he looked around. He was suddenly stunned, and pointed to the skylight. Wow, that's your signal, isn't it, Bruce? Everybody turned around and saw the image of a bat projected into the sky above Gotham. They could see it clearly even from the base 10 kilometers away. That was right, this was Commissioner Gordon's standard turning on the light routine when something bad enough happened. Luke stood up and said, let's go. There are traces of Parademon activity in the city. That's probably why Gordon is calling for you. Both Master Wayne and Diana nodded and stood up. Barry was flustered, he wanted to follow, but hated to part with the table of food. His mind raced, and he disappeared, only to return with a big food pouch. He put most of the snacks into it. It would be a waste not to eat them. Each one costs more than $10. Hey, wait for me. With that, he disappeared from the table. Commissioner Gordon stood on top of the GCPD building and looked up at the bat signal in the gloomy sky. He frowned. It was another rainy night. He couldn't help but put his hands in his pockets and huddle into his coat to block out the pervasive cold and dampness. Suddenly, he saw something. Director Gordon immediately knew that his good buddy, his old friend, was here. Sure enough, when Gordon looked at the shadow that had appeared in the corner of his eye, he saw Master Wayne perched on the signal tower on the roof, his cape fluttering behind him. He had just landed after gliding through the air. Why didn't he land on the ground like a certain other person? That was because it was Luke's choice to keep a low profile, not Master Wayne's. After he was done posing, Master Wayne made sure that there were no eavesdroppers nearby before he jumped down. Gordon shifted his gaze, only to see 3 people already standing silently where Master Wayne had landed, the battle goddess, Diana, in her red and gold battle outfit, Barry, in an all-red suit, and Luke, Master Wayne's impersonator. Gordon's attention lingered on Luke for 2 seconds before he looked at Master Wayne. Apart from this person, how many other Batmans like you are there? Hearing the questioning tone, Master Wayne frowned. I'm the only Batman. Tell me, what's going on? Gordon took out a kid's drawing and handed it to him. 8 people from STR Labs have gone missing, 6 in Metropolis and 2 here on our side. A kid drew a sketch of the kidnappers. Master Wayne saw that the drawing was of a humanoid with wings and a hood over its head. Diana glanced at it. It's a Parademon. With one look, Luke understood why Commissioner Gordon had paid more attention to him. The Parademon had wings like a dragonfly's on its back, and its insect-like facial features were too complicated for a child to draw, so it had been rendered simply as a black hood. Coupled with the fact that the sketch was done in black pencil, it looked 60 to 70% similar to Batman. Thus, he could understand the hostility he sensed in Commissioner Gordon's mental fluctuations. After all, Luke wasn't an old friend like Batman. It was normal for Commissioner Gordon to be suspicious. Of course, Luke actually felt that Commissioner Gordon looked a little like someone from back home, like that Jameson guy. That guy's family opened a branch of the Daily Bugle in New York. When he went to Los Angeles to play, he tried to steal Vanessa from Wade. Wade, who hadn't been too crazy back then, beat him up and pretended to steal $20,000 from him. Luke looked at Commissioner Gordon, who was wearing a black coat and a black hat. He was a serious man, and didn't look like he deserved a beating at all. Clothes really made the man. 9 now. A figure jumped up onto the roof. The red eye in his face startled Commissioner Gordon and Barry. Barry hurriedly patted his pounding heart and glanced at Master Wayne and Luke, before he relaxed. These two were much better fighters than he was. In fact, Master Wayne, Diana and Luke had sensed the person's arrival earlier on, and had just been waiting for him to come out. The person walked out of the shadows on the roof to reveal a strange metal body and half a human face. It was none other than Victor Stone, whom they had failed to rope in not long ago. His expression was dark and angry. The head of STR Labs was just taken. Everybody except Commissioner Gordon was enlightened. The head was Victor's father. No wonder he had come over now after seeing the bat signal, when he hadn't agreed to join the Justice League before. Unlike Barry, who had clutched his chest, Commissioner Gordon was used to being startled. He only glanced at Victor, seeing that Master Wayne and the others didn't react. He knew that they weren't enemies. He took out a document from his pocket. It was a map of the crime scene. We investigated these locations, but didn't find the kidnapper's base. Victor's mechanical eye flashed red. Only on the mainland. Everybody looked at the map, and Victor did the calculations swiftly in his head. Putting all the monsters' movements together, Brixton Island is a very likely location between the two cities. As someone who worked underground, Master Wayne was very sharp. Back then, Gotham Port wanted to build an underground tunnel to Metropolis, but the economic crisis happened a few years after it was started, and it was abandoned. Gordon couldn't help but follow his gaze and look in the direction of Metropolis. After staring for a moment, he turned around. Do you really think that the Parademon's nest is there? There was already nobody in front of the commissioner except for Barry, who was listening to him with a dazed expression. Seeing Gordon's surprised expression, Barry looked around in surprise. Wow, they disappeared just like that. Rude. Swoosh. The top of the GCPD building was completely quiet, leaving Commissioner Gordon with his mouth open. He then shook his head, as if he didn't know what to say. A few minutes later, the newly established 5-member Justice League stood in front of a huge tunnel. Looking at the image transmitted by Luke's drone, Master Wayne frowned. The people from STR Labs are still alive. There are over 100 parademons. Everybody was quiet. Victor's father was also inside. It was inevitable. Everyone would be just as cautious if it were the butler or Barry's father inside. Luke blinked. Are you forgetting something? Everybody looked at him. He looked at Barry and patted the energetic young man on the shoulder. When we move later, charge in and get Victor's father out first, then the others. Barry was lost for words. Seeing the agreement on everybody's faces, he was a little stumped. He raised his hand and said hesitantly, okay, it's like this. I'm afraid of insects. Everybody was lost for words. Although the parademons looked a little like insects, they were completely different. Barry continued to confess, they also have guns, and they're bigger than me. Everybody couldn't help but look at the monsters on the surveillance feed. Many of them were indeed holding guns. As for their size, Barry's head didn't even reach Diana's shoulder. That's it. Bad guys shorter than you are definitely rare. Barry wasn't done yet. I'm afraid of blood and dead people. To be honest, I've never fought a bad guy. At most, I just push them and run. Master Wayne stepped forward and loomed over Barry, who stopped babbling. Staring into the kid's eyes, well, they were the lenses of the nanosuit, but his eyes could still be roughly made out. Master Wayne said in a low voice, then save one first. Barry, what? Master Wayne said, save one person first. Victor's father. Barry, and then. Master Wayne said, don't talk, don't fight. Go in and bring people out. That's all. Barry, that's it. Master Wayne nodded seriously. That's right. When the time comes, you'll understand the rest. Barry swallowed nervously. He suddenly really wanted a cup of Knight's black tea. However, he still nodded. Okay, got it. In the engine room, a huge figure with two horns on his head had Victor's father up against a wall. Suddenly, a figure burst through the old metal door and slashed at his back. The huge figure reacted quickly and blocked the attack with a huge axe. Looking at Diana's outfit, his gray face twisted into a hideous smile. Amazon. A fierce battle instantly broke out. The battle goddess used her long sword to open a way, and Master Wayne and Luke charged in. But before that, Barry, who had been taking deep breaths, had already disappeared. Before Victor, who knew that Barry was going to save his father first, could feel worried, Barry reappeared in front of him. The man he was holding was none other than Victor's father. Barry asked, "Is this your father?" Victor nodded blankly. That was too fast. He hadn't even gathered his emotions yet. Barry heaved a sigh of relief. Then, hang on a tick. There are still a few people inside. Are we bringing them out together? Victor nodded. There was faint excitement and eagerness on Barry's face. He disappeared and reappeared with a swoosh, and a second lab employee was brought out. Victor, holy sh*T. While the two new teammates were still getting used to each other, the three old partners inside were already on a killing spree. Without Superman, the battle goddess had become a super tank worthy of the rank. Her sword and shield worked together to attack and defend at the same time. She fought back and forth against Steppenwolf's strange giant axe, and didn't fall to a disadvantage. Luke couldn't help but look down on Steppenwolf. That was it. He had the cheek to look down on the Amazons. Except for some special existences, the populace of most races were made up of ordinary individuals. Luke could beat up billions of Earthlings back home, but did that prove that Earthlings were weak? Even putting aside Inhumans like Skye and Emma, along with the Hulk, Wanda and Pietro, and Steve in his nano-suit, were all ridiculously strong in certain aspects in which even Luke couldn't compare. As for this DC universe, Barry had already rescued Victor's father, but Steppenwolf hadn't even noticed. Given his level, he had the cheek to look down on the battle goddess. In just a few seconds of watching the fight between Steppenwolf and the battle goddess, Luke confirmed that this guy was far inferior to Doomsday. Perhaps Steppenwolf had other abilities, but in terms of head-on combat, he didn't have crushing strength. No wonder this guy had been sneaking around all this time and only got the parademons to look for people. He had only shown up in person to take the mother box from the Amazons. Wait, why did it feel like he was the sort of guy who talked trash but was actually a coward? To be honest, the threat he posed stemmed from the large number of flying, attacking parademons under him. The parademons were once intelligent beings that had been caught by Steppenwolf and transformed. The deeper their fear of him, the stronger the parademon they turned into. These parademons had the ability to sense and absorb fear. Thus, the more they were feared, the stronger they became. Unfortunately, none of the three people who had charged in thought much of the parademons. While Diana fought Steppenwolf on her own, Master Wayne, who had already had the arc reactor for a while, unleashed his might. His armor previously had an auxiliary power system, but that was mainly to reduce the weight of the armor. Now, the armor had a heart and could deal maximum damage. A casual punch here, and a kick there, and parademons were sent flying. And this took into account how durable the armor was. Otherwise, it wouldn't be hard to pierce and shatter the parademons with a punch that weighed several tons. For Master Wayne, who had full combat ability, a punch that weighed hundreds of kilograms was enough for him. At the very least, the parademons didn't have magical abilities that could slow him down or restrain his movements. It was like an expert fighter beating up small fry. He didn't stop moving, to avoid being surrounded. At the same time, he took down the soldiers around him. On the other side, Luke was even more straightforward. As was Knight's customary practice, he didn't use blades or guns. His main weapon was two metal batons. Ordinary extendable batons only reached 50 to 60 centimeters in length, but the two in his hands could extend over 2 meters at their longest, which made them no different from staffs. The difference was that the end of each staff had a retractable spearhead. It wasn't wrong to call them extendable spears. The Muto alloy couldn't do anything to a super boss like Doomsday, but against the parademons, it was no different from stabbing pork. The chests and brains of the two parademons that had lunged at him were pierced, and dark green fluid splattered in the air. From this point of view, it made sense when Barry called them insects. Luke wasn't afraid of insects, on the contrary, he hated many types of insects, so he didn't hold back as he spun and pulled out the two spears. The two parademons were sent smashing into the wall with muffled bangs. As he landed on the ground, Luke stabbed two more parademons, one in the back and the other in the chest. He didn't need to pull his arms back as the long spears instantly turned into short spears. The two parademons that had just pounced on Master Wayne from above were skewered like pork belly. Master Wayne didn't even want to thank him, he had been ready and waiting to kick out. Just like that, two blackish-gray shadows jumped around in the huge tunnel as they fought the parademons. In the center of the tunnel, there was the clanging of metal and sparks flew as Steppenwolf and the battle goddess fought. For a moment it was impossible to tell who was winning. However, Steppenwolf was feeling a little uneasy. That was because of the green fluid that was being splattered around by Master Wayne and Luke. In less than a minute, more than half of the 100 or so parademons were dead, but they hadn't dealt any effective damage. Master Wayne, whom Luke had upgraded with advanced technology from back home, was much stronger than the last time they fought Doomsday. Even though he didn't have the plasma propulsion technology yet to fly, he was still able to take down the flying parademons in this confined space. It was even more of a breeze for Luke. These parademons were just small fry. As long as they didn't interfere in the fight between the leaders, there was no difference in killing more or fewer of them. Their real target was Steppenwolf. If Luke was confident that cutting off this guy's head with one slash was enough to guarantee that he couldn't be resurrected, he really wouldn't mind snatching the battle goddess weapon and doing the deed. Unfortunately, these two were fighting fiercely on a metal walkway close to the middle of the tunnel, and clearly had yet to use their full strength. Seeing that the situation wasn't looking good, Steppenwolf decisively swung his axe. A light blue teleportation passage appeared in the air and enveloped Steppenwolf as he started to rise up. At the same time, a large number of parademons roared and flew out of the tunnel toward the Justice League. Inside the teleportation passage, Steppenwolf's gaze swept over the people who were beating up the parademons, and he mumbled, "Once I retrieve the mother box, this planet will completely surrender." Patting himself on the back mentally, he confidently ordered the parademons not far away, "Blow up this place." With that, he disappeared into the teleportation passage. The parademons looked at each other before they screamed and flew to the top of the tunnel. They plucked off the energy grenades at their waists, flicked off the safety, and pressed the trigger. With a beep, the energy grenades exploded, lighting up the entire tunnel. Everybody who was fighting the monsters couldn't help but raise their heads in surprise. Barry swallowed. "What's up there?" Master Wayne sighed. "Gotham Harbor." Barry asked, "Isn't that connected to the ocean?" Master Wayne wanted to roll his eyes. "Why are you so long-winded? Run. Bayou." "Ah!" Barry screamed. There was a black mark on his thigh. He had been shot by a parademon when he was distracted. He said gloomily, "See, I wasn't wrong, right? I'm not good at dealing with insects or guns. Get out of the way if you don't want to be covered in blood." Luke was too lazy to deal with these small fry. After giving everyone a warning, he quickly spun around. Over 100 bat darts flew out, like bats on the hunt for prey. The concentrated sound was like countless people opening beer bottles at the same time. Then, dark green parademon blood rained down from above. Barry was looking up, and felt that this terrifying scene was right out of a horror movie. His leg didn't seem to hurt anymore as he let out a strange shout and disappeared down the tunnel. Master Wayne, who had been kind enough to go over and take Barry away, widened his eyes. Holy sh*t. Pitter-patter. Dark green blood, broken limbs and internal organs drenched him, turning him dark green. The battle goddess, who had activated her divine shield's force field in time, suddenly burst out laughing. Ha! Luke, who had also used the armor's protective shield to block the bodily fluid, landed. Alright, if you don't run, you'll be getting a free bath. As he spoke, he grabbed Barry, who had been hit in the thigh, and flew away. Diana was still smiling, but she immediately ran into a side tunnel. The way she flew was more like jumping and gliding. She wasn't as nimble as Luke's suit, but she could move very quickly in a straight line, and would definitely be faster than seawater. Before Master Wayne could say anything, he heard a series of cracks above his head. Then, with a loud bang, a huge amount of seawater broke through the ceiling and came crashing down. He wasn't in the mood to curse anymore. With a tap of his foot, the powerful propulsion from the arc reactor allowed him to immediately jump more than 10 meters into the side tunnel which he had come from. Given the rate at which seawater poured in, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape it on flat ground. His armor had only been upgraded with a power system, and wasn't waterproof at all. It didn't matter if it got wet, but if it was immersed in water, it would definitely short-circuit. Wouldn't he just turn into a metal turtle then, and sink to the bottom of the ocean? Unfortunately, Master Wayne was too slow. Just as Luke and the others saw the tunnel entrance, the high-pressure seawater caught up to him. Seeing that he couldn't escape, he finally turned around and cursed. F***ck. A figure charged out of the surging waves and blocked in front of Master Wayne. Spinning the five-pronged trident in his hand, he stabbed it into the ground. The seawater immediately parted. Master Wayne was stunned for a moment. You. The person with his back to him said, you better run faster. I can't hold it off for long. Master Wayne turned around and ran. Thanks to these precious few seconds, he finally charged out of the tunnel. Less than 5 seconds later, water burst out of the tunnel. The figure holding the trident also flew dozens of meters into the air before he landed. The large amount of seawater he brought with him poured over Master Wayne. The newcomer smiled in embarrassment. Well, your armor looked a little dirty, so I washed it for you. Expressionlessly, Master Wayne plucked a flustered crab off of his head and flicked it into the water next to him. It's fine, Mr. Curry. Thank you for your timely assistance. Arthur Curry chuckled. You're welcome. Commissioner Gordon, who was walking over, looked at Master Wayne with an indecipherable expression. The mayors of both cities should thank you. They finally don't have to argue over who will fork out the money to complete the underground tunnel. Master Wayne said, in any case, they wouldn't be able to fork out the money even if they discussed it for another 100 years. Commissioner Gordon, is this also a good friend of yours? It seems you've become a lot more open. I'm very glad. Arthur winked and gestured at his head. Huh, your helmet is interesting. It's a bat, I get it. Master Wayne said expressionlessly, see, not that good a friend. Commissioner Gordon. After shutting the commissioner up, Master Wayne asked Arthur, why did you change your mind? Arthur shrugged. Because of Steppenwolf. He stole that box from Atlantis not long ago. Diana frowned. Then the only thing he needs now is the box which mankind has. Victor, who had sent his father to an ambulance, walked over. That thing is still in the secret warehouse in the lab. After he said that, everybody suddenly looked in the direction of Metropolis. In the dark night, a light blue teleportation passage dozens of meters tall appeared in the air and landed somewhere. Luke said, that's the STR building. The secret warehouse you mentioned isn't there, is it? Victor, it is. Everybody. They still had to go, but even with Luke demonstrating how fast Knight's armor was, it was useless. No one from the Justice League was in the secret warehouse. It was impossible to stop Steppenwolf for even a second. Also, this guy was definitely the kind who talked big but was actually a coward. No matter how arrogant he sounded, he was actually avoiding them, and instead turned around to steal the box which mankind had been keeping in the secret warehouse. Steppenwolf wasn't a brainless animal. When he took over STR Labs, he had continued to monitor everything. Given how parademons flew almost soundlessly, it really wasn't hard for one to spy on a group of ordinary humans. When Luke and the others had been fighting, Steppenwolf had confirmed the location of mankind's box. Making a clean retreat, he switched directions, stole the box, and ran. Everything was done in one go. He had no intention of fighting them at all. This sort of person was also the biggest headache for Luke, because the other party knew what he wanted. Once the mother boxes were put together and Earth turned into the environment he needed, Luke and the others would turn into the away team. The billions of people on Earth would fall into fear and despair, which was equivalent to billions of backup parademons. This alone sickened the Justice League to death. Even if Superman returned, Steppenwolf would definitely be pounded to sh*T, but all of mankind would be dead by then. Apart from Luke being able to earn one last round of experience and credit points, it would be meaningless. He had to kill this guy as soon as possible. The group returned to the Justice League's new base. The joy of rescuing STR Labs people and escaping unscathed faded, and the atmosphere turned a little gloomy. When they thought about it, Steppenwolf had lost some small fry, but had snatched mankind's box. He absolutely gained big in exchange for a small loss. Although they had rescued people, especially Victor's father, they hadn't actually gained anything. They still had to deal with the mother boxes transforming Earth. Thankfully, Luke had casually used Light of Life to treat Barry's injury, and the kid was already jumping around again. As soon as they entered the base, Barry went to the table and poured himself a cup of black tea to calm down. The high-end thermos kept the black tea hot. Even Barry, who had lost more than 100 milliliters of blood, warmed up. Still, he didn't forget to call his new teammates over to enjoy it as well. In the end, Arthur snorted. "Is there wine? I like that." Barry was a good kid who never touched alcohol. Nobody had ever drunk alcohol in the base. Hearing that, he could only shake his head. "I'll look around." Swoosh! Swoosh! A few seconds later, Barry returned with a bottle and gave it to Arthur. "How about whiskey?" Arthur raised an eyebrow in surprise. He accepted the alcohol and patted the kid on the shoulder. You're not bad." Barry chuckled. Looking at Victor, he scratched his head. "You probably don't drink tea." In fact, he wanted to ask if Victor wanted engine oil, but thanks to the corny joke routine which he and Luke had, he thought for a long while before he realized that it wasn't a polite question to ask. Victor said calmly, "No," he then stood to the side with his arms crossed. He wasn't in the mood to drink anything. He had been accidentally transformed by the mother box kept by mankind. Once the mother boxes were combined together, he might end up under their control. Furthermore, Steppenwolf was the original owner of the mother boxes. At the very least, he was the one who had brought the mother boxes to Earth. The thought of becoming a parademon and obeying Steppenwolf made Victor uncomfortable. While the new teammates were chatting, the three veterans walked over. Master Wayne took off his helmet and threw it to the side. He poured himself a cup of black tea. He wasn't one to talk nonsense about the sour sting of being doused in cold water in the middle of Gotham's winter. Diana also took off her gear. She placed her sword and shield on the weapons rack on the side, and even tossed the lasso of truth onto the couch. It was bad enough that they had been unable to take down Steppenwolf during the fight. More importantly, she could sense that Steppenwolf was indeed stronger than she was. Although it wasn't a crushing difference, it would be hard for her to get revenge on her own. This guy had killed one of her sworn sisters and hundreds of her people on Paradise Island. How could she say that she was a princess of the Amazon if she didn't get revenge? Luke was the calmest. The nano-armor shrunk back into a necklace to reveal Mr. Bale in his suit. He wasn't too wary of Steppenwolf. As long as the other party wasn't the type who didn't stay dead after being taken down, it wouldn't be hard to kill him. So, he coughed to draw everyone's attention, then said, "Don't think too much about what's already happened. The most important thing now is to find Steppenwolf. If he wants to use the mother boxes to transform Earth, he won't go into outer space, right?" As he spoke, he looked at Victor. Victor opened his eyes. "I'm looking for the whereabouts of the mother boxes." Luke nodded. "If you need any equipment or information, you can look for Alfred." Then, he looked at Master Wayne. "You make the arrangements." After Luke's opening remarks, Master Wayne quickly got into character. He subconsciously coughed and said, "Everybody, get some rest and be on standby. Once Victor finds Steppenwolf, we'll set off." It was simple, straightforward and efficient. A speech before battle? At the very least, they had to wait until they found Steppenwolf. Arthur sat down with the bottle of whiskey and said lazily, "Steppenwolf is very strong. We might die." Everybody turned their heads. Arthur, however, didn't seem to notice their expressions. He continued, "To be honest, I don't mind. We have to stop him, but Superman isn't here. We don't know when he'll be back." Everybody was silent. Arthur pointed the bottle at a certain person. "No offense, but you don't have superpowers." Master Wayne was expressionless. "I'm sorry, I don't have superpowers." Arthur pointed at a second person. "And who knows, you might be a spy." Victor's eye glowed red. Arthur went around the group. "You're too weak. You're fast, but you're so small." Barry blinked. "If I were as big as you, would I be able to run fast?" Arthur pointed at Luke. "You look alright, but why are you imitating that dude with no powers?" Luke smiled but didn't say anything. Master Wayne looked at the couch under Arthur. Finally, Arthur looked at the battle goddess. Diana had already lowered her head several times to hide the smile on her face. Arthur sighed and shook his head. "God, you're so beautiful. You're also very strong and brave." The 3 men and 1 robot looked at each other with subtle expressions. In the end, they all looked at the couch under Arthur, and tried to hold in their laughter. Arthur said, "My ancestors fought the Amazons, but I wasn't around back then." At that point, he looked nervous and forced a wry smile. "I'm still young. I haven't lived long enough, and I don't want to die yet. I don't think I've traveled the oceans and the lands of this world yet, but I've always been alone. I'm happy to be able to do something big with you." Diana lowered her head again and smiled. Even Master Wayne smiled. This was a very normal mindset for a young man. He wanted to do big things, but he didn't have the confidence, and he didn't want to die. Of course, no normal person wanted to die, let alone someone with mixed blood like Arthur, who could come and go as he pleased in the ocean and on land. Although this guy talked trash, what youngster didn't go through that stage? Even though Arthur had sloppy long hair and a scraggly beard, he was indeed a young man. At most, he looked a little anxious. Master Wayne had a good attitude toward young people, especially those who could fight. With a smile on his face, he pointed. "Arthur, you're sitting on something." Arthur finally stopped talking. He turned around and grabbed a rope that was glowing with a hazy golden light, the lasso of truth. Luke had personally tested the lasso part on Doomsday. But the truth part was indeed better demonstrated by someone else. Throwing the lasso aside, Arthur felt the urge to talk abruptly disappear, and the golden light on the lasso faded. He vaguely guessed what was going on, and was embarrassed, but didn't know what to say to alleviate the humiliation from his earlier babbling. Victor's unhappy expression turned into a smile. He shrugged and walked away. He turned on a virtual screen to search for Steppenwolf. Master Wayne nodded. I'm going to go fix my armor. It seems some water got in. Luke said, I can help a little. As they spoke, they walked to the workbench in the distance. Diana had already pressed her lips together so many times that they were pink, but she held back her laughter and praised, cough, cough, what an interesting speech. Also, thank you for the compliment. With that, she walked over to Luke and Master Wayne. Only Barry was left at the scene, busy drinking tea and eating to replenish his blood loss. Sensing Arthur's gaze on him, he raised his head blankly. What's wrong? Arthur did his best to put on a fierce expression. Kid, don't mention it, or I'll chop you up and feed you to the fish. He then left in a hurry. Barry blinked innocently. Did you say something just now? I didn't hear you. 3 hours later, Victor suddenly shouted, I found him. Everybody got up. Where? Victor said, Pozernov, northern Russia. Master Wayne said, there used to be a nuclear power station there. It was abandoned after a major accident 30 years ago. It's desolate. Looking at the satellite image, Victor shook his head. But there are still residents nearby. There aren't many, but it's still over 1,000 people. Everybody couldn't think of anything to say. Who knew if they would be caught up in the battle later? The main thing was that the number was neither here nor there. It wasn't a lot of people, but still too many to save in one go. Barry was confused. There are people still living there. Wasn't there a nuclear accident? Arthur said sagely, there's nowhere to go. They can only stay there. They have no other choice. Barry fell silent. Did the homeless who ate and slept in the open not want to live in big houses? Unfortunately, they could only live in shacks made out of cardboard and plastic sheets. Master Wayne said, let's go first. We can talk on the plane. A moment later, a plane that looked similar to a Stingray rose from the underground warehouse of the new base and headed west. Thanks to money, Master Wayne's fighter plane could travel close to Mach 3. They arrived at their destination 2 hours later. At that moment, the town called Pozernov had changed drastically. The sky was covered in a layer of blood-red dark clouds, and there was a huge defensive dome on the ground, with what looked disgustingly similar to blood vessels squirming over it. Coupled with the parademons flying around inside the dome, it was like an insect nest. The others got off the fighter plane, but Master Wayne didn't. I'll destroy the tower and the dome so that you can attack. Everybody looked at each other and didn't say anything as they watched the plane take off. Diana looked at Luke. You agree with him? Luke chuckled. What's the point of disagreeing? He's Batman. Less than half a minute later, there was a series of explosions on the blue defensive dome, but it just shook slightly and glowed a little. The explosion settled, and the defensive dome was intact. Then, there was a second round of bombardment, but the outcome was the same. The fighter plane soon flew back and landed in front of everyone. Master Wayne got out with a dark expression. I've already used all the big guns, but I can't break through the dome. If they didn't break through the dome, they wouldn't even be able to see Steppenwolf's face, let alone fight. With a smile, Diana drew the sword from her back. Then let's see what I can do. If a powerful bombardment couldn't solve the problem, she could only rely on her divine longsword to break through. Compared with the advanced technology that she didn't know much about, the battle goddess was very confident in her longsword. Seeing that, Luke said, wait a minute. My delivery is here. Everybody turned their heads with questioning expressions on their faces. There was a whistling sound as something black and oval fell from the sky, while there was a distinct black dot in the distance. It was the transport plane which Luke had been controlling remotely, which had dropped the gear. Although Luke could use his inventory, he didn't plan to reveal it too soon. Master Wayne was already very paranoid. If he discovered that Luke had a space ability, how would he deal with him? Of course, global airdrop support was also a powerful ability, but that was nothing more than money in technology. Luke had already amply demonstrated his strength in these two areas, and Master Wayne could completely understand. Under everyone's gazes, Luke slowly rose 10 meters into the air. On the gear's approach, it suddenly slowed down. At the same time, it unfolded like 4 petals before sticking gently to Luke's back. Compared with what happened in the Battle of New York, this docking assembly was a lot more flexible and intricate. Of course, this wasn't Luke's doing. Tony had worked on this when he was bored and had given it to the Ursa Minor kids as a gift. What could Luke say? Of course he would make use of it too. The docking sound was actually similar to how the cool robots he had seen on TV as a kid in his previous life were assembled, which was why he hadn't specially eliminated it. With Tony's ready-made technology, the entire process had a very sci-fi feel. Luke's 1.9-meter-tall close-fitting suit hence expanded to become a metal giant more than 2.5 meters tall. It had a huge visual impact. Barry's eyes lit up. When Luke landed slowly, Barry flashed to his side. He reached out with a starry-eyed expression. So cool. It's beautiful, perfect, unbelievable. Luke said, "All right, after we take down Steppenwolf, I'll help you improve your suit. You can have one for yourself to play with." Barry immediately complained, "How can I play with it? This is a work of art." Diana, "Then what about the items in my collection? Are they just paper, metal, mud?" Master Wayne was also very interested, and involuntarily asked, "What's this?" Luke said, "Firepower Support Gear, version 2.0. Master Wayne, second generation." Luke said, Master Wayne fell silent. For someone like him who also played with equipment, the name gave him a rough idea of the gear's functions. Firepower support was the description of its function. 2.0 meant that it was a second-generation model, which meant that the technology was more mature. From the looks of the two shoulder cannons, this set of firepower support gear was at least no weaker than the Batmobile's heavy firepower. But that wasn't the end of it. Luke casually took out 2 high-tech energy pistols that looked like toy guns and tossed them to him. Master Wayne caught them and frowned. "2 guns will affect my movements." Luke said, "The suit has multiple holster modes. Pick a suitable one." Stumped for a moment, Master Wayne then communicated with the smart program of the nanosuit that he was wearing. Soon, 2 balls of black liquid stretched out of the gaps in his armor and changed around his legs. In the end, it finally stabilized on the side of his thighs, forming 2 magnetic holsters. If he wanted to use the guns, he could get to them any time he wanted. If he didn't want to use them, he just needed to stick them to the holsters, and the nano holsters would automatically lock the guns in place. Master Wayne liked it, but was a little lost for words. If he had known, he would have worn the nanosuit earlier on and studied its functions. As a highly paranoid person, he had never worn the nanosuit. Even the butler's set was locked away in a box, and was only taken out for study. After all, just a preliminary test already showed that this thing had a very mature smart program. Of course, this wasn't an AI. It was just a program for adjusting combat habits, and was very good at putting them together. Also, it had an advanced data communication function, and could easily send out the intelligence it had gathered at any time. How could someone as cautious as Master Wayne dare wear it in battle? It was only because he had to fight Steppenwolf today that he just barely trusted Luke a little and put on this nanosuit. Of course, Luke had taken this into account. The nanosuits which the Master and Butler had were bound to their thought waves so that they held sole authority. Except for the self-destruct function, which could only be triggered at the highest level, nobody else could add or take anything out of the original program. In any case, this nanosuit had been tested by thousands of real people, and was already an extremely mature product after 10 to 20 years. There was no need for anyone to modify it at all. If Master Wayne was capable, he could try making a new, modified version. That would have nothing to do with Luke. This way, only the Master and Butler could use the 2 sets of armor. At the same time, anyone else who might get their hands on the armor wouldn't be able to activate it. It would be no different from a brick to them. The master and butler could personally wear and test the suit, and recreate the smart program bit by bit, or they could just let it collect dust. Luke didn't feel any pressure about this. Giving things to Master Wayne for free would just make the other party even more suspicious. Let him do his best to crack it himself. The fruits of one's own hard work were always especially sweet. While experiencing the convenience of the nanosuit, Master Wayne also examined the two energy pistols in passing. He saw 2000 on the LCD screen. Is this energy? The red and green icons were too obvious. Luke hummed and said, standard rapid fire mode is 300 shots per minute, up to 2000 shots. High explosive or armor-piercing mode is 1 shot per second, up to 200 shots or so. Master Wayne, is this a pistol or a machine gun? Or a howitzer? 300 bullets wasn't a shocking number, but only a vehicle could carry 2000 bullets. In fact, automatic pistols and submachine guns could also fire 600 to 800 bullets per minute. It wasn't hard at all, but taking into account the actual motions, weapon manufacturers had specially reduced the firing rate for the sake of precision and practicality. Otherwise, firing 30 shots with one pull of the trigger would only take a second or two. Machine guns with 2000 bullets were basically only mounted on vehicles. Luke suddenly had a thought. He took out 2 long belts from his holsters and threw them over. These energy clips are basically the same as regular pistol clips. They also have 2000 bullets. Master Wayne, fine, he wants me to become a machine gun shooter. The operation had finally begun. The earlier attack by the Batplane. Don't ask, if you asked, Master Wayne would just say it had been a test. They charged down the hill. Master Wayne was the slowest on foot, so he simply glided down using his bat-winged cape. Diana, who was in the lead, jumped up and slashed down with her longsword. The blade was limned in a faint red light. The light blue dome and the blood vessels on it couldn't withstand it all. A burning cut instantly appeared and spread out over 10 meters. A moment later, the cut swiftly started to repair itself. The members of the Justice League, however, had already filed into the dome. Master Wayne suddenly switched directions mid-glide. I'll distract the parademons. You attack the central tower. Everybody looked at each other as they ran, and it was Diana who said, I'll take the lead. Luke had no objections. In a kill operation like this, it was normal for the main player, Diana, to take command. In any case, there weren't many orders to give. It was roughly the process of charge and find Steppenwolf kill him. On the other side, Master Wayne had already contacted the butler. Alfred, you can play the track now. The butler said, but you didn't drive the Batmobile. Old Master Wayne said, the nanosuit has an external audio system. You can link to it. Looking at the new link request on the screen, the butler agreed right away. He played the specially compiled audio file and increased the volume to the maximum. Playing Songs of the Year. You can enjoy it now. On the other side, with just a thought, the nanomaterial stretched out through the gaps of the armor on Old Master Wayne's shoulders and neck to form speakers on both sides. Strange howling rang out. A large number of the locust-like parademons had just noticed the arrival of the Justice League and were about to charge over, when they suddenly heard strange howling, which made them feel irritable and uncomfortable. With a roar, the parademons surged toward Old Master Wayne. The team members who had already moved to the side saw this scene. The densely packed parademons were enough to make a trypophobic person pass out. Arthur couldn't help but ask, will Batman be squashed to death? Barry shuddered. He couldn't imagine being squashed under a bunch of bugs. It was too disgusting. The next moment, a storm of energy bullets poured out of the guns in Master Wayne's hands. Compared with gunpowder, an energy gun with practically no recoil didn't affect his air glide. With almost 10,000 bullets on him, he didn't have to worry about keeping up firepower. Why should he hold back? Naturally, it was best to take advantage of this first long-range attack. The parademons immediately suffered under this rapid barrage. Although the energy bullets weren't as powerful in ordinary rapid-fire mode, they were already very lethal to the flying parademons. The moment they were injured, they lost their balance and fell to the ground like dumplings. These ones could be considered lucky. The more unlucky parademons were the ones at the very front. Each one was hit with 4 or 5 energy bullets, and they sprayed dark green fluid like a leaking bottle before they hit the ground with a splatter. Diana had initially been keeping an eye on the situation to see if Master Wayne needed rescuing, but who would have thought that with 2 guns in his hands, Master Wayne really looked like a god who would kill anyone in his way. It didn't look like he would be squashed to death at all. In particular, when Master Wayne landed among the buildings, he was like a fish in water. Master Wayne was a professional at fighting on the streets. With a grappling hook and his cape, and the energy pistol switching between hands, he was still able to open a path as he glided forward. When he was surrounded by a large number of parademons, he used the formidable power support system and a combo of the pistol's various firing modes to force his way through. Diana only paid attention for a moment before she turned around and looked at the tower that was hundreds of meters tall. If we take down this tower, the dome will definitely be affected. His fighter plane outside will come in handy then. Without the dome, the fighter plane and the Batmobile could combine ground and air firepower to cooperate with Master Wayne in killing the parademons. The butler was an old hand at driving. It was common for him to drive the Batmobile remotely, and it was the same with the fighter plane. After confirming their target, the group sped up and rushed to the bottom of the tower. There were still some parademons here. Although they looked irritated, they weren't drawn to the noise made by Master Wayne. When they saw the group, they immediately flew over. Hundreds of them was quite an alarming sight. Luke said, "Keep moving. I'll take care of them." As soon as he said that, his 2 shoulder cannons fired. Compared with ordinary bullets, energy bullets were much more useful firepower support. The 2 shoulder cannons each had a backup reactor and didn't lack rapid fire, high explosive, and armor-piercing power. Master Wayne's firing tempo was like a light drizzle compared with the shoulder cannons, which were like a storm. The shooting support program tagged the incoming parademons. It didn't lock onto a specific target, but directly covered a route with firepower. As if they had hit a wall of light, the parademons that flew over exploded. None of them could enter a range of 100 meters. In the end, even the parademons that had just emerged from the tower were blown up. Everybody, including Diana, now had a little more confidence in this mission. Based on Master Wayne and Luke's performances, it was unlikely that the parademons, who had the absolute advantage in numbers, would be able to surround and kill them. In the face of a powerful opponent like Steppenwolf, the slightest delay by the parademons could affect the tide of battle. After eliminating the parademons at close range, Luke switched to the armor-piercing and high-explosive firing modes. With a series of muffled bangs, several huge balls of light shot out and hit the tower 2/3 of the way up. The tower section here was thinner, and was only 10 meters in diameter. More than 10 armor-piercing and high-explosive energy bullets hit this section, creating a huge hole. The impact of the high-explosive bullets caused a crack to appear and spread throughout the tower. Luke used another round of armor-piercing and high-explosive attacks on the crack, completely shattering the balance that the tower was barely able to maintain. The top half of the tower, which was more than 100 meters tall, fell at an angle. Luke deliberately controlled the angle of the bombardment so that the tower fell in the opposite direction from the Justice League. As the tower fell, the defensive dome quickly disappeared. The battle goddess at the very front perked up. She took the lead and blasted a huge hole in the tower with her sword as she charged in with everyone. Steppenwolf roared angrily, "You idiots, come back." As old Master Wayne fought and ran, the parademons that had been lured several kilometers away paused before they turned around to defend the tower. Master Wayne frowned. He indeed wasn't in any danger from the horde of parademons chasing him. But if the demons wanted to run off, he couldn't stop them with his limited firepower. Alfred, use the plane and try to intercept some of them. Oh, remember to drop the car here as well, he instructed as he ran toward the tower, firing wildly. The butler's voice was as even as ever. Your car is on the move. The plane missiles are ready to launch. Less than 5 seconds later, dozens of white streaks shot out from the fighter plane that had just taken off, and they exploded 100 meters away from the tower. Caught off guard, the parademons that were in range of the explosions were blown away. Those that couldn't get out of the way in time charged into the flames and were sent rolling by the violent shock wave. The reinforcements stopped moving forward. Master Wayne jumped onto the Batmobile that sped over, but didn't get in. Instead, nanomaterial stretched out of his suit and turned into a hook to latch onto one side of the car. The firepower from the energy pistols was really useful, and it would be a waste to sit in the car, so it was better to leave the driving of the Batmobile to the butler. In any case, the old man had been very energetic recently, so multitasking wouldn't be a problem for him. More importantly, Master Wayne realized a problem. He instructed, Alfred, have the fighter plane fire at maximum power. Help me control the Batmobile. On the other side, the butler was sitting in front of a wide curved screen. He casually pulled up a second remote control system on the side. After inputting an automatic attack command for the fighter plane, he turned around. Our air burst missiles aren't lethal enough against the parademons. Most of them only have minor injuries and can still move. As the butler spoke, the parademons that had been blown away by the explosions got up from the ground. Many flapped their wings and flew toward the tower, while some with damaged wings started to run. Overall, the fighter plane's firepower had caused about 30% damage. But that was just limited to the parademons that had been affected by the explosions. The damage to the total number of parademons was at most 5%. Those were all the missiles on the fighter plane. It was impossible to take down another 5%. The resilience of the parademons was beyond Master Wayne's expectations. He had thought that the explosions would damage most of the parademons within range, but the transparent wings, which looked a little like dragonfly wings, weren't afraid of high temperatures. Most of the parademons who couldn't fly had only sustained injuries when they crashed hard to the ground. Master Wayne had only completed half of his task, which was to lure the parademons away and allow his teammates to charge into the tower. However, they were also surrounded. Now, Master Wayne had to rush over and deal with the upcoming fight with everyone. Master Wayne cleared the way with the Batmobile as 2 machine guns on the car mopped up the parademons that were chasing him from the air. He just hoped that his teammates could hold on. When Luke opened fire earlier, Master Wayne had been tussling with a large group of monsters and hadn't paid much attention to Luke's firepower support gear. Master Wayne was facing the tower at that moment, when he saw a horde of flying parademons abruptly explode in a storm of light. Amidst the hiss of rapid-fire energy bullets and the bangs of high-explosive bullets, a large number of parademons were hit dozens of meters away from the tower. Master Wayne couldn't help but mutter, "Holy sh**t." He estimated that these energy bullets were more than twice as fast as his rapid-fire energy bullets, even accounting for the significant decrease in speed of the high-explosive mode. That firepower support gear was so fierce. Master Wayne couldn't help but recall the muzzles on Luke's shoulders. He was pleasantly astonished. No matter how suspicious Master Wayne usually was of this super fan, he was relieved that Luke could provide strong firepower support for the operation. He had to solve the problem at hand first before he could do anything else. That was how pragmatic Master Wayne was. As the Batmobile approached the tower, the fight there astonished him even more. Luke's firepower gear had been invented a long time ago. In fact, after nanotech matured, the nanomaterial's ability to change form and structure at will allowed for the incorporation of multiple functions. The external add-on components lost most of their use. After coming here, however, Luke dug out this old tech that had already been retired for over 10 years. The outer nano-armor could be stored and released freely to protect the body. Master Wayne was already very wary of flying attacks. If a weapon system was added to the mix, he would probably lose sleep from how worried he was. Thus, unless it was necessary, Luke didn't want to reveal his top tech too soon. The add-on components were technologically advanced, but couldn't be carried around, at least, Master Wayne didn't think so. Even if they could be dropped from the air to be attached to the suit, the process could clearly be interrupted. The add-on components were much easier to contend against compared with the nano-suit, which integrated offense and defense, dealt short and long-range attacks, and which could transform at will. Secondly, the firepower support components and the shoulder cannons did increase output frequency, and could be used in multiple modes. At that moment, not only were the energy cannons on Luke's shoulders firing freely, the high-energy plasma beams and vibration cannons on his arms could deftly fill in the gaps and send large groups of parademons flying, not giving them a chance to charge into the tower in one go. On Master Wayne's swift approach, Luke looked like a glowing dot. A tangle of light blue and orange energy bullets wove a splendid yet cruel battle of flesh and blood in the air. Of course, it was all Parademon flesh. 20 seconds had passed since the other team members charged into the tower, but only a few dozen of the horde of parademons which Steppenwolf had summoned back had made it past Luke's firepower blockade. It was unbelievable that Luke could do this in the face of at least 1,000 opponents. Also, Master Wayne could sense that Luke was clearly holding back. It wasn't that he couldn't kill the parademons that had slipped through, but that he didn't want to waste time on them when he had to fend off even more of them. There was nothing wrong with Luke's choice. Letting a small number slip through the net in a short period of time was better than letting enough parademons flood in en masse. Luke was slightly relieved when the Batmobile arrived. It was quite annoying to face so many parademons on his own. Master Wayne could now fill in the gaps. Batman would have no problem dealing with these small fry with his 2 pistols, as long as it wasn't 100 at a time. They didn't talk, but Luke consciously opened a path for Master Wayne so that the Batmobile could charge in. Then, Master Wayne flew straight into the hole that Diana had created in the tower, not stopping for even a second outside. However, the Batmobile started to circle the tower under the butler's control, and the 2 machine guns also slowed down, only firing at the scattered parademons that Luke had missed. This was mainly because of its ammo. The Batmobile wasn't an armored truck with an ammo trunk, it had a smaller capacity, and half of the ammo had already been consumed when it charged in. At that moment, it could only provide support. Luke wasn't disappointed. Instead, he took the time to look into the broken tower and at the main hall down below. Inside, Steppenwolf and the Justice League were fighting fiercely. Diana and the other 3 charged in. Instead of doing the whole, pre-battle spiel, like in the movies, they attacked right away. They had already discussed tactics in the 2 hours it had taken to get here. As for exactly how each person would fight, there weren't many requirements. But who would attack and who would act as backup, what each person was entrusted to do, and how to make up for any mistakes, were all prearranged. Luke and Master Wayne stopping the parademons was also part of the plan. If there were too many of the parademons, they had to be separated from their leader, Steppenwolf, so that the Justice League could besiege him. In this plan, Luke and Master Wayne stressed the issue of time. The 2 of them would only be able to hold back a certain number of parademons. During this time, Diana and the others had to quickly defeat and even kill Steppenwolf. It was only a matter of time before something went wrong. At that time, it would be hard to say who was attacking whom. Thus, when Diana brandished her sword and shield and clashed with Steppenwolf, Arthur attacked from the other side with his trident without hesitation. Barry didn't take action. This guy was too weak. In his first clash with Steppenwolf, the other party might use some special method to instantly kill him. For example, after running some experiments with Pietro, Luke had come up with a telekinesis twine for capture and an annihilation mesh that could cut a person to pieces. After his mental strength exceeded 100, he only needed to make preparations beforehand to set up these two traps around him. Speed wasn't just the other party's weapon, but also a way to get themselves killed. Unless the other party had mental proficiency or a special technique for sensing danger, it was inevitable that they would die from running into the colorless telekinesis twine or the annihilation mesh. It was like setting up thin steel wires across an F1 racetrack. How many racers could dodge that? Besides, Pietro had been pierced with a metal pipe before, while Barry had just been hit by a stray bullet last night, which proved that Speed wasn't invincible. A moment's pause was enough to get them killed. Thus, Barry could only act as a quick-moving assassin and backup player. He was only responsible for taking action in a critical moment. Victor, on the other hand, was the only person who could interfere with the mother boxes and create an opportunity to stop them from fusing together. At that moment, Diana and Arthur were the only two people left to attack Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf, whose defensive dome had been blown up, was in a bad mood. The huge axe he was holding glowed red as he swung it, and it collided with the sword, shield and trident. But after he unleashed his full strength in his fury, it was a little more than Arthur or Diana could take. Diana and Arthur could still hold on, but they were sent flying every now and then, creating huge craters in the hull. They were unable to take down Steppenwolf in the time Luke had bought them. Barry simply sent dozens of parademons flying so that they smashed into the walls. Compared with killing people, killing parademons was a good start. At the very least, their green blood didn't look human at all. The downside was that the suit was also splattered and smelled disgusting, which made Barry want to retch. The situation finally changed with Master Wayne's arrival. As he glided in, he adjusted his trajectory slightly in the air and fired at Steppenwolf from the side. Steppenwolf, who had just forced Diana and the others to retreat, was hit by light blue beams. Most of Steppenwolf was protected by armor, and he wasn't injured by the energy bullets, but he had to cover his face with the axe. Also, he couldn't completely avoid the impact of the energy explosions. The dense blue rain of bullets continually pushed him back, instantly disrupting his smooth battle tempo. Diana, who had been feeling under pressure, instantly seized the opportunity and lunged forward, her long sword sweeping across Steppenwolf's legs. Master Wayne was an extraordinary expert at rhythm. He stopped attacking almost the moment she started moving. Steppenwolf didn't even have time to curse as he continued to retreat. Arthur also went around to stab Steppenwolf in the butt with his trident. He didn't care about the dignity of his divine weapon at all. Steppenwolf swung the huge axe to block this shameless attack, before the axe flipped back to block Diana's attempt to amputate him. Just as he was about to attack, blue light flashed in front of his eyes. He couldn't help but roar, but only had time to cover his face with his left hand. Two high explosive bullets exploded, and Steppenwolf ate dirt. In just one exchange, Master Wayne had screwed Steppenwolf over. Steppenwolf, who had been suppressing Diana and Arthur on his own and hadn't forgotten to mock them in the process, finally couldn't keep his cool. Roaring, he got up and swung his huge axe, and the light blue teleportation passage appeared again. The hissing of parademons came from the passage, and they swarmed out like locusts. Victor was standing in front of the mother boxes and analyzing the energy nodes, and couldn't deal with anything else. The expressions of the others didn't look too good. The parademons weren't life-threatening to the Justice League, but they were a hindrance. Master Wayne frowned. If he had had one more day, no, even half a day, to come up with a few more countermeasures, they wouldn't be under this much pressure. At that moment, he heard Luke's voice. "You come up and block the parademons outside. I'll deal with the ones inside." Thinking quickly, Master Wayne threw out his grappling hook. "I don't have enough firepower. I won't be able to hold on for long. You have to be quick." Luke said, "No, you will have enough firepower soon." Master Wayne. With a head full of questions, Master Wayne flipped out of the broken tower, just in time to see Luke launch an explosive attack. The highly explosive bullets blew open a passage in the air, and an oval blackish-gray object flew in. Master Wayne was smart enough to understand the moment he saw it. Is that backup firepower support? Can I use it too? Luke said, the nanosuit has connectors, but your external armor isn't that sturdy, so you should be careful. Stand upright. I'll send you up. Master Wayne only had time to adjust his posture before Luke threw him dozens of meters into the sky. The gear moved behind him and unfolded into the shape of a cross before it stuck to him. The nanosuit was already on standby to connect, and data ports protruded from Master Wayne's armor so that the gear could lock onto him. Luke finally unleashed a burst of firepower. He flipped over and fell through the hole in the broken tower. I'll leave it to you. Just stop most of them. Looking at the lock-on notification on the virtual screen, Master Wayne's thoughts moved, and the two shoulder cannons immediately started to spit out energy bullets, taking down a large number of approaching parademons. In just 10 seconds, Master Wayne had a rough idea of how the gear worked. The shoulder cannons had an automatic target lock. All he needed to do was give it permission to fire at a particular target. For example, the parademons in front of him were all classified as one type of enemy. In addition, he could adjust the way he identified friends and foes, and reset the cannon's attack mode. This was a little more troublesome, but better for distinguishing between friend and foe on a chaotic battlefield. He was also able to freely operate the two plasma pulse cannons on his arms and use the two energy pistols at the same time. If he had a complete set of the armor, he would also have two pulse cannons in his palms. The shoulder cannons provided cover, while the rest was additional firepower. As long as you had enough brains, you could become a battle fortress on your own in this multi-weapon mode. Not only that, Master Wayne realized that Luke had been holding back. On the excessively large sections of the external gear on his thighs, there were also two small missile launchers. The missile boxes contained thermobaric, shrapnel, ship armor-piercing bullets, specially used against battleships, and black hole missiles. There were only two of the last type of missile. Old Master Wayne thought that it was just a fancy-sounding codename, like calling a weapon hurricane or divine punishment. When he read the brief explanation, however, his eyes widened. The missile could create a small-scale spatial distortion in a short period of time, which had the effect of pulling in and compressing the space into a black hole. The advantage was that it was very lethal within a short range, but its weakness was that the enemy could escape this lethal range through interference or moving quickly. Fine, it would be hard to kill Steppenwolf with this. Master Wayne gave up on the idea. If a black hole missile could really kill the target, wouldn't it be better for Luke to throw out dozens of them in one go and hound Steppenwolf to death? There were only 24 small missiles in total. Clearly, they were just to supplement the energy bullets, but they also proved that Luke was sparing no effort to block the parademons. This also meant that Master Wayne had slightly more leeway in making mistakes. If the two energy pistols were a kid's squirt guns, then a full set of firepower support gear was a high-pressure faucet. Even hundreds of parademons wouldn't be able to withstand a round of damage from the shoulder cannons. At that moment, Master Wayne finally wasn't as worried as before. He patiently familiarized himself with the controls. After all, double firepower meant double happiness. Besides, the add-on components had a separate plasma propulsion system because of their excessive weight. Although the gear wasn't as agile and fast as the nanosuit, it was still more flexible and faster than gliding. Spinning in the air as he attacked would be a piece of cake. While Master Wayne was familiarizing himself with this new toy, Luke, who had dropped into the tower, automatically turned the cannons on his shoulders and fired at the teleportation passage. Like a flood blocked by a dam, the parademons that were pouring out immediately fell. Hundreds of parademons had already poured out to attack the members of the Justice League. Luke's cannons were like machine guns as they bombarded them. The parademons that were surging forward and giving the team members a headache were like cockroaches that had been squashed under a big foot as they exploded all over the ground. After catching his breath, Steppenwolf lunged at Victor, who was in front of the mother boxes, but a huge foot fell from the sky to step on the back of his head. Steppenwolf, who felt that he was strong, simply blocked with the giant axe in his right hand as he reached for Victor's neck with his left hand. The foot falling from above suddenly sped up. At the same time, it twisted strangely and swung around the axe to hit Steppenwolf in the face. Bang! Bang! The sound of metal colliding with flesh was crystal clear, and Steppenwolf was sent flying. Before he could collect his thoughts, he was sent flying further by cannon fire. The key still lay with the mother boxes. Once Earth was transformed, the Justice League would be successfully suppressed and would fail. After Victor separated the mother boxes, the crisis on Earth would be over, and they could besiege Steppenwolf. Even if Steppenwolf escaped this time, Master Wayne could use the mother boxes to come up with countless schemes to screw the other party over in the future. That was also the reason why Steppenwolf hadn't gone outside for reinforcements from the parademons during the fight in the hall. Luke didn't feel smug after dealing with the guy twice. Instead, he frowned and looked at the teleportation passage not far away. This thing was actually still active, and parademons were coming out non-stop, making it impossible for him to do anything. Without any hesitation, the armor on Luke's leg opened up and fired a black hole missile. The black hole missile hit a parademon that had just crawled out of the passage. There was no explosion, only a faint hiss, and the rapidly expanding distorted space covered most of the passage. Unexpectedly, the distortion and the constantly fluctuating passage seemed to react with each other, and both of them started to fluctuate and rapidly become very unstable. Boom! The teleportation passage shattered, and the violent energy turned the parademons inside the passage to dust. Luke's expression froze. He flashed to Victor's side and created a large shield which he smashed into the ground. Wild energy swept out, blowing away both parties inside the hall. The battle goddess could still withstand it with her divine shield, but Master Wayne and Arthur were sent flying. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Barry was the first to slip away to find cover. Steppenwolf roared, clearly angry and anxious, but he had no choice but to retreat in the face of the violent energy. After the explosion, he realized that there was a problem with the teleportation between this location and his base, and he could no longer open the teleportation passage. This also meant that Steppenwolf had suddenly become a lone wolf. Until the teleportation passage was restored, he couldn't even escape. After the violent energy shock wave, both parties immediately took action. The morale of the Justice League skyrocketed, and Diana and Arthur lunged at Steppenwolf excitedly. The high and mighty Steppenwolf was finally afraid. Without any hesitation, he fled the hall to find reinforcements. For the first time, he regretted using just the teleportation passage to rush over and take over this tower. It was because he no longer had any misgivings after Superman left. Once the mother boxes successfully transformed Earth, he could become a new god, and no longer had to fear Superman's return, at least, that was what he had thought. Even now, he was just worried that Superman would destroy the process of the mother boxes fusing together, and wasn't afraid. In his hurry, he hadn't been able to bring too many things with him, plus the teleportation passage was only 2 meters in diameter. Small-scale soldiers like the parademons could come through the teleportation passage, but not large battleships and fighter planes. From Steppenwolf's communication with Lex before the latter died, he had gotten an idea of the level of technology which Earth had. With the might of tens of thousands of parademons, he didn't have to worry about Earth's armies at all. Earth's armies, which used inferior weapons and equipment, were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered in front of the parademons. Even if they had nuclear weapons, Steppenwolf could put up a barrier against them after obtaining the mother boxes. That was also why he had been sneaking around and only started making noise after obtaining the mother boxes. Who knew that apart from Superman, there was also the Justice League? Now, the Justice League was actually using firepower to suppress him. Steppenwolf felt like a big shot with a private army who would go out on the streets with just a few bodyguards every now and then, In the end, however, he was surrounded by a street gang and pissed his pants. It was a bittersweet feeling. After giving up on the mother boxes for the time being, Steppenwolf was furious and raised his axe. Idiots, spread out. Keep attacking from the ground and the sky. We don't have to kill them. We just need to tie them down at close range. At his specific instructions, the horde of parademons outside immediately charged forward. Although they were still densely packed together in the air, they seemed more like specks of mosquitoes scattered around. They charged at the tower in this scattered formation. The way they were dispersed reduced the lethality of the high explosive bullets by more than 10 times. What had just been mindless swoops downward turned into swift, sharp dives which made use of the terrain and debris to advance. Master Wayne, who had only felt good for less than a minute, immediately felt terrible. It was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. This was what a typical battlefield was like. On this wide battlefield, the distance between both parties was huge, and they could only use a bullet screen to blind the enemy. Otherwise, the only way was to find a suitable city space and engage in the cruelest street battle to increase the lethality of the bullets. No matter how good Luke's firepower support gear was, it was impossible to block a large number of demons for a long time. Soon, the scattered demons broke through Luke and Master Wayne's line of fire and charged within 100 meters of the tower to clash with the Justice League. If they didn't want to injure their own teammates, they could only give up on firing at the parademons that slipped through. After all, both sides were moving, and every energy bullet fired could become a stray bullet. It didn't matter if dozens or hundreds of the parademons were taken down, there were only 4 members of the Justice League. Weak little Barry simply stayed inside to protect Victor as the latter dismantled the bomb. Arthur had just attacked Steppenwolf a few times, when 2 parademons crashed into him and bit him. Arthur smashed their heads together and felt sick. His armor wasn't fancy looking to begin with, and the parademons were only making it smelly and green. That was too much. Diana's rhythm was also disrupted by the onslaught of parademons. When Steppenwolf swung his axe at her, she could only block it with her shield. She had been in a hurry, and Steppenwolf was ready and waiting as he instantly sent her rolling dozens of meters over the ground. She had just put on the nanosuit which Luke had given her before this. The battle goddess shook her head and got up. "Knight, we won't be able to keep this up for much longer." Luke sighed. "I didn't want to make things too big, but it seems I underestimated Steppenwolf." Before he finished speaking, dense fiery streaks fell from the sky, like a sudden meteor shower. Hundreds of fiery streaks swiftly approached the battlefield before they suddenly slowed down thousands of meters in the air. Even so, a rain of energy shells fell from the sky 5 seconds later. Compared with Luke and Master Wayne's string of energy bullets, these hundreds of energy shells were like a net. The parademons might be vigilant, but they couldn't do anything about it. They spread out and charged forward, but Luke just used even more firepower to crush them. The floating cannon turrets that had been dropped from tens of thousands of meters in the air amply demonstrated their worth. They weren't able to move at high speeds, but had a huge energy source and plenty of ammo, as well as multiple cannons. These cannon turrets were once off use, there was no need to think about dodging the enemy at all. They just needed to produce the most firepower in the shortest amount of time and cause the most damage. It was indeed strenuous to hit mosquitoes with cannons, but under a bombardment, the mosquitoes could be burned to ash. The countless parademons were the mosquitoes. The highly explosive ammo didn't care about conserving energy at all as they exploded in a range of 1,000 meters. After a series of calculations, the hundreds of floating turrets arranged themselves layer upon layer in the sky. The explosions caused by the energy shells left the flustered parademons with no other way to escape. They could only charge into the sky in vain. The simplest choice was to charge out of range and destroy the turrets. Steppenwolf's expression changed. "Idiots, run." As a leader who had experienced many battles, how could he not see that this was a trap? But it was clearly impossible for the parademons charging upward to hear him. Thus, when they charged at the floating turrets and started to wreak havoc, huge balls of white light flashed in the dark sky. The parademons that had gathered around the floating turrets like locusts didn't even have time to scream in the huge white explosions before their frightened expressions started to melt. In the end, they turned to dust and were carried even further away by the white light. From the rapid descent of the floating turrets to the gunfire cover and 70% of the turrets exploding, everything happened in under a minute. What had been a densely packed sky above the small town now only had several hundred annoying parademons left. In order to avoid accidentally injuring the Justice League members, the turrets didn't bombard the ground hundreds of meters around the tower. The lucky parademons there thus avoided the first calamity, but a second purge followed. A second group of turrets deliberately had put some distance between themselves and the first group of turrets that had self-destructed. A few seconds after the most intense explosions, they started to descend at a steady rate. After the rain of highly explosive shells, a regular shower of rapid-fire shells started to clean up the ground and kill the remaining soldiers. They also fired at all the injured parademons that had yet to die, ensuring that they all died without intact bodies. Steppenwolf slowly lowered his head with an ugly expression on his face. He no longer looked like he had everything under control. At that moment, Luke, Master Wayne, Diana and Arthur surrounded him like schoolyard bullies. While all the parademons were being destroyed, Steppenwolf had tried to escape, but the Justice League had taken turns blocking him. It was like a weakling being surrounded and pushed around. Given how this guy had flaunted his axe last night and said it was stained with the blood of the battle goddess warrior sisters, it now felt a little like a black comedy. Previously, Steppenwolf could still make a strategic retreat under the cover of the parademons. At that moment, the floating turrets were controlling the situation from the sky. Steppenwolf was still fine here, but once he was out of the same range as the Justice League, he would definitely be shot in the face. What else could this commander do? He was full of despair. The 4 members of the Justice League had no intention of talking nonsense with this guy. As usual, the battle goddess, Diana, let out a yell and was the first to attack this boss. This time, with no parademons to hinder them, Luke and Master Wayne joined the battle, and Steppenwolf immediately felt the difference. He had just blocked Diana's sword, when Master Wayne kicked him in the face with a metal foot. The external gear that Master Wayne was wearing was so big that the impact was at least 10 tons. Steppenwolf couldn't adapt to the change in rhythm at all, and was instantly trampled into the ground, creating a huge crater. What happened next could only be said to be utterly without class. Falling to the ground wasn't scary. What was scary was losing your center of gravity or losing control over the fight. Luke literally followed in Master Wayne's footsteps. Luke, who was far faster than Master Wayne, kicked Steppenwolf's right hand to stop him from swinging the giant axe. Arthur also raised his trident and charged forward, but couldn't find any part of Steppenwolf's upper torso that wasn't covered by the external firepower support gear. But he had already raised his hands. He had to do something, right? Helpless, he could only exert all his strength with both hands and yelled, "Aw! Poochie!" "Aw!" Steppenwolf's scream was even louder and more wretched. Not everyone could withstand being stabbed in the groin. Diana had just been pushed back a few steps by the giant axe. At that moment, only 1/3 of Steppenwolf was still visible, his 2 legs. Recalling how this guy had thrown her warrior sister's deaths in her face last night, she didn't want to miss out. She swung her divine longsword, and Steppenwolf howled even more miserably and struggled with all his might. Diana cut off his legs. Master Wayne's surprise attack was a success. The impact sent him flying 10 meters away. At that moment, he turned around, only to see that Steppenwolf was now unrecognizable as he screamed on the ground. What made Master Wayne even more speechless was that Luke was much more cunning than he was. He hadn't used the momentum to retreat at all. Instead, he stood next to Steppenwolf and stomped on him like a pile driver. He even had a strategy when stomping on Steppenwolf. Most of it was aimed at Steppenwolf's upper limbs, which didn't give Steppenwolf a chance to swing his arms and counterattack. Noticing Master Wayne's gaze, Luke immediately said, "What are you waiting for? Come join us." Master Wayne. He didn't say anything, but actions spoke louder than words. Master Wayne turned around, and the plasma thrusters sent him back into the crowded circle, right in front of Luke. It couldn't be helped, there was only one empty spot left. With the addition of the magnate, Steppenwolf instantly couldn't even scream anymore. There was a strange coordination between Luke and Master Wayne. After Luke called him over, they didn't exchange any words about splitting the work, but tacitly took care of one of Steppenwolf's arms each as they continued stomping wildly. After just a few stomps, these two experts actually found a rhythm. With the work now distributed, their attacks consumed even less time. Furthermore, they gripped each other's arm to borrow strength, which made stomping a piece of cake. As a result, Arthur didn't have a chance to do anything at all. He could only yell in frustration as he repeatedly stabbed Steppenwolf's waist and thighs in frustration. The battle goddess was depressed. It was only after she cut off Steppenwolf's calves that she realized that she had completely lost her spot. She could only watch helplessly. The scene in front of her was like three street hoodlums beating up an idiot boss. Bored, she raised her sword and shield and stood guard for a moment, but finally couldn't take it anymore. Crouching down next to the pit, she shouted at the three men who had been busy for almost a minute, "Hey, let me kill him. If you keep beating him up, he won't even have his head left." Two of the three men stopped and looked up. Luke was the only one who didn't stop stepping on Steppenwolf's squashed head. "Just cut it off. This guy's head is really hard. He won't die so easily." Diana rolled her eyes. "Are you trying to crush his head into cheese?" That being said, she had already jumped down and stood in the spot vacated by Master Wayne, and gestured at Luke. After Luke took 2 steps back, the divine longsword slashed at Steppenwolf's neck. That should be where the neck was, right? She wasn't sure. Luke and Master Wayne had stomped so hard that the pit was almost 10 meters deep. Diana felt that Steppenwolf's head and neck were about to become one. Steppenwolf, who looked like he was about to die, suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the divine longsword in mid-swing. He roared indistinctly, "I'm going to become a new god. I can't die." With a faint creak, the longsword started to break through his metal glove. Steppenwolf, on the other hand, showed his tenacious side as a boss and refused to let go. Luke, who had given up on his own plan in order to let the battle goddess get her revenge, had an idea, and quietly moved behind Diana. "What? You still want to be saved?" Everybody was stumped at his words. Then. "Poochie." Luke drew back his hand and said calmly, "It seems you no longer need it." Just now, Luke had suddenly pressed down on the hilt of the long sword with his hand and stomped on Steppenwolf's right hand. Steppenwolf, who was putting up a final struggle, watched as the long sword suddenly sped up and cut through his neck like a guillotine, cutting off his entire head. He died with his eyes wide open. Luke looked at the kill notification in the system in satisfaction. He was about to say something to ease the atmosphere, when Barry appeared next to them. "Victor is in trouble. He can't separate the mother boxes on his own." As he spoke, he looked at the battle goddess. Separating the mother boxes required tremendous strength and a strong enough physique. Otherwise, the energy that would leak from the process could easily blow up the people nearby. Barry felt that Diana met the strong and tough requirement. Luke grabbed him. "Take me there." Barry had become used to following Luke's instructions for the past 2 days. Before he knew it, his body obediently moved. Swoosh! They appeared next to Victor. Hearing the movement, Victor said quickly without looking back, "The energy cycle will collapse in 17 seconds, and someone will have to help me separate the boxes then." Luke stood opposite him and flexed his hands. "Synchronize the data and give me a simulation of the separation process." Victor immediately did as he was told, but still looked at him worriedly. "Are you sure you will be able to withstand the energy leak from the mother boxes?" Looking at the movements of the person in the simulation on the virtual screen, Luke cracked his neck. "It's not a big problem as long as I can't die." Recalling the white light which Luke had used to rapidly heal Barry's wound, Victor got it. "Okay. As for the power, your armor should be able to take it, right?" Luke said, "It should be as strong as Diana's." "Should?" Victor was skeptical, but there was no time to waste. "Alright, be careful. I'll count to 3 before I say go. At that time, do your best." "Okay," Luke replied simply. There was now only around 5 seconds left. Victor lowered his head again and focused on the mother boxes in front of him. 3, 2, 1, go. Luke's hands stabbed into the white light like lightning, and the 3 mother boxes suddenly separated from each other. However, the 3 boxes were still connected in a row with extremely strong energy beams. That was the problem that Luke needed to solve. Without any hesitation, he planted his feet firmly and placed his hands on the boxes on each side of him. A huge amount of energy entered his body, and Luke savored the aftertaste. It tasted a little like wheat with a light floral hint. The energy from the mother boxes tasted alright, but the problem was that there was a lot of resistance between the boxes. Even if he was doing his best as a human hydraulic machine, the distance between the 3 boxes didn't increase much, to say nothing of them separating altogether. An anxious expression appeared on Victor's face. "We have to hurry. They'll recover and fuse back together in 10 seconds at most." What he didn't say was that after the mother boxes fused back together, they might be able to transform Earth even more quickly. Luke didn't rush. Thinking quickly, he felt that he could try using annihilation energy. After all, the annihilation energy's strongest attributes were to annihilate and block. When villains used magic or other types of energy to regenerate after that, any injuries they sustained in the aftermath wouldn't heal for a short period of time. Perhaps this also applied to these mother boxes that were full of life energy. Thinking that, 2 transparent annihilation blades shot out of Luke's hands. The annihilation blades, which had always been indestructible, cut the white energy beams between the 3 boxes like an ordinary blade cutting through thick leather. Although they could be cut, it was a very taxing effort. Thankfully, Luke's mental strength was high enough, and he could withstand this consumption for the time being. Just like that, the transparent annihilation blades slowly cut through the white energy beams and cut off the energy circuits between the 3 boxes. Victor, who was also working hard, sensed the change, and was pleasantly surprised. "What did you do?" "The energy flow is weakening. Not long now. We'll succeed if we hold on a little longer." At that moment, all the members of the Justice League who had returned were delighted. For them, killing Steppenwolf wasn't their main objective was to protect Earth. Yep, it was the same for Luke. Steppenwolf was only worth millions of experience and credit points, which was equivalent to hundreds of thousands of lives. It seemed that he hadn't been that tyrannical when he came to conquer Earth last time. After all, he hadn't succeeded in the end, and had even been sent running. Of course, that might be because his goal wasn't to kill or injure Earthlings. In any case, Earth would become his source of new soldiers after the transformation. Under everyone's gazes, the 3 boxes gradually separated. Victor warned him, "Be careful. The energy is about to leak out." Swoosh! Barry was as quick as ever. He was already hiding outside the tower, and only half of his head was sticking out to look in their direction. Everybody else looked at him in disdain. Master Wayne moved back 10 meters and put the external gear on his arms together so that there was only a small gap between them. The battle goddess raised her shield to her chest and was done with her preparations. Arthur didn't move at all. He was still holding his trident and watching happily. Diana was going to warn him, but remembered that this guy was also a demigod and definitely wouldn't die, so she stopped. As soon as Victor spoke, the white light that was wrapped around each of the mother box in a ball 50 centimeters in diameter fluctuated violently before turning into a blinding white light that spread out. It happened very quickly. Even Barry only had time to exclaim and cover his eyes before he was blinded. No matter how fast he was, he couldn't reach the speed of light. The world turned completely white, and then it was pitch black. Diana and Master Wayne had it the easiest. One had subconsciously raised her shield at the last moment, while the lenses on the other's helmet had an anti-flash function. Arthur was the most unlucky. He had just covered his eyes and screamed when he was hit by the energy leak and smashed into the wall. 3 separate boxes lay quietly on the ground. Dozens of meters away, Luke and Victor were lying on the ground on opposite ends. Victor's situation was a little better. After all, he had been transformed by one of the mother boxes, and had an innate affinity with this energy, so he wasn't blown to smithereens. After completing the most important mission and averting this world crisis, Victor couldn't help but chuckle. He had finally done it. Even though he had become like this, he could still do something big. "How are you? You're not injured badly enough to die, right?" he asked with a smile. Unlike the others, who had been some distance away, Luke had been exposed to the energy leak the most. If it were Master Wayne, everyone would be looking for barbecue meat or ash. Luke coughed and slowly sat up. "It's a good thing you didn't ask Diana, or she would have been disfigured." Diana, who had come over, was both a little sad and touched. She couldn't help but want to laugh when she heard that. Looking at the half-melted parts of the external gear on his arms, Master Wayne frowned and walked over. "And you like this doesn't count as disfigured?" At that moment, the completely damaged nanomaterial on Luke's armor was falling off as gray dust. However, the armor on his front had basically been destroyed, revealing a large amount of charred skin. With the front of his helmet removed, his handsome face didn't look handsome at all. Instead, he looked more like a horror movie villain boss. His face was badly mangled and his facial features weren't intact. Luke covered his face with his hand. Enveloped in light of life, the faceless flesh was gradually replaced with Bale's handsome face. Everybody finally relaxed. With this ability, there was indeed no need for him to be afraid of being disfigured. Arthur finally crawled out of the rubble. Witnessing that scene, he touched his face, which was a little dark from the explosion. "Can you fix this for me?" Everybody glared at him. "You want a seriously injured person to make you pretty? How shameless." Luke didn't feel indignant. Arthur actually had a bit of a silly nature, he had only asked the question casually. Luke stood up and walked over to Arthur. He stretched out his hand, which was enveloped in white light. "All right, you should be able to sense that there is a limit to what my ability can do to treat you." When Luke put his hand down, Arthur frowned. "Why's that?" Everybody was curious. Luke coughed and explained, "Barry and Bruce are human, but you and Diana can be considered demigods. That could have something to do with it." Everybody nodded. Luke looked at the battle goddess. "So, Diana, you still have to protect yourself. Otherwise, I won't be able to help you like Arthur here." Everybody looked at Arthur, whose skin had turned even darker, and nodded again. Diana would probably go crazy if she became like that. Not only that, Arthur's features were also slightly bent out of shape from the explosion. He suddenly looked a lot uglier. It didn't matter if a rough man was ugly, but it would be a waste for Diana to end up like this. Arthur was depressed. Victor had kindly warned him, but Arthur had just let Luke do his thing, he had asked for it. Then, everybody slowly walked out of the broken tower with the 3 boxes. Standing at the opening, the 6 of them looked at the town in front of them. The mother boxes had been separated, and the dark red clouds caused by the energy they emitted were dissipating. A clear sky appeared, and golden sunlight shone down through the dissipating dark clouds on the remains of the town. The land and buildings that had been dyed purplish-black by the energy of the mother boxes were losing that scary color, and countless colorful flowers and low-lying plants rapidly popped up. Luke checked the surveillance data right away, but didn't find any suspicious harmful substances. At that moment, he could sense the rich life force contained in the vegetation. Although the human body couldn't absorb a lot of it, it was still likely to be beneficial for anyone who settled down here. Everyone else was relaxed, including the super-paranoid Master Wayne. Not everyone could remain vigilant after saving all of Earth. As for Luke. In any case, this wasn't the first time he had saved the world. If he was really happy, it was because the system had just done the calculations for Luke completing this mission to save Earth. It gave him a 60% contribution rate, which was a total of more than 90 billion experience and credit points. In addition, there was a notification that Diana and Barry had also become one-star teammates. Naturally, they shared about 5 billion experience and credit points with Luke. An income of almost 100 billion experience and credit points in one go was indeed rare. However, for a certain someone who still needed trillions of experience points to graduate, this was a small amount. By a conservative estimate, it would take more than 10 to 20 incidents like this one. It was understandable that Arthur hadn't become a teammate. This guy acted silly, but he was a little wary of people. It was unrealistic to become teammates right away after one mission together. Master Wayne. If Luke succeeded, that would be a miracle. If he didn't, that was normal. In any case, the ruined town on this wide plain had turned into a strange and magnificent botanical garden, which lifted everyone's spirits. The capes on Luke and Master Wayne's backs fluttered in the breeze. The residents who had escaped after the defensive dome was destroyed looked at the flower town with complicated feelings. The view was beautiful, but the houses in the town were changed beyond recognition and were no longer livable. At the very least, however, they had escaped during this huge event, and were much luckier than the residents of the same town who had died at the hands of the parademons. Luke noticed their expressions. Back home, he and Tony had set up a rescue foundation specially to provide aid. It seemed that this place could also do with one. People like Master Wayne subconsciously became paranoid when someone acted too friendly with them. Conversely, doing something good to help others was an easy way to increase their good impression of a person. Helping regular poor people was something a lot of people did, not just Luke, so Master Wayne naturally wouldn't think much of it. Helping those who suffered losses specifically from a battle between superhumans might pique Master Wayne's interest. However, a few years had passed since Superman's battle, while the incident with Doomsday a few months ago hadn't caused much damage to the city, so Luke never had a suitable opportunity to do anything. Sensing that everybody was in a relaxed mood, he immediately said in a low voice, "This view is beautiful, but I don't think Russia will let those people live here anymore." Stumped, everybody turned around. Luke said, "Although it was Steppenwolf who caused this, ordinary people probably wouldn't know. Do you think we'll cop the blame for this?" Everybody could guess the answer just by thinking about what happened to Superman. Master Wayne's heart skipped a beat. He didn't want to become like Superman. Although he couldn't be considered a law-abiding citizen in Gotham, his target was gangs and villains. Ordinary people were seldom implicated. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Luke said, "Set up an aid foundation which specializes in cleaning up the aftermath and help affected civilians with life matters like medical treatment and employment." Barry could only think of examples based on his own understanding. Like unemployment benefits? Luke shook his head. That's raising lazy pigs. Dealing with the possible consequences of a battle is one thing, but we won't bother with anything else. A person's life is ultimately their own business. You can't rely on other people forever. Master Wayne agreed. Okay, we'll discuss it when we get back. Luke nodded and turned to Diana. Rich lady, are you in too? The battle goddess rolled her eyes at him, but agreed. Sure. Arthur scratched his head. I don't have any money, but you can contact me if you need anything. Luke nodded. You might not have the money, but you're putting in the effort. Saving people in the ocean is itself a good thing. Don't worry about it. Victor doesn't have to fork out money either. His internet skills are more useful to us than money. The Justice League had just been set up, and had yet to start on these things. But Luke had been guiding online public opinion for decades, and was very familiar with this process. Victor didn't need a keyboard to go online, with just a thought, he could stay on top of public opinion. Maintaining the Justice League's reputation online would be a simple thing. As long as they could suppress the most extreme opponents and magnify the voices of their supporters, online public opinion would never be one-sided. As long as public opinion wasn't one-sided, the public wouldn't be able to force the Justice League to explain itself. Superman had previously been forced into a tight spot mostly because he wasn't in the mood or was unwilling to deal with this sort of thing. Otherwise, he could have gone into the ocean or underground to look for lost treasures with his X-ray vision and turn into a multimillionaire overnight. Luke didn't have high moral requirements of himself or other people, as long as innocent people weren't hurt. So what if he manipulated public opinion? Even if he didn't do it, the financial groups would. They could impart the spirit of consumerism so that those at the bottom enjoyed themselves with no thought of the future. Or, they sowed discord between men and women. Between a female multimillionaire and a man who made $100,000 a year, who wielded power. When soliciting funds for an election campaign, would the money not be accepted if it was from a woman? In the end, most problems in the world could be attributed to economic issues, or rather, to interests and resources. Most people argued over things until their faces turned red. Actually, this was bait thrown out by the upper echelons to draw fire. For example, if a husband didn't make enough money to buy his wife luxury goods, he didn't love her. Most people at the bottom weren't aware how luxury goods had become synonymous with love. The slogan, "Diamonds last forever," was a masterpiece of this sort of manipulation. Worthless things were dressed up as love, and then sold at a high price. It was the same for all luxury goods. It didn't affect the lives of the rich to spend this bit of money. The ordinary people at the bottom thought that they could be like the rich if they bought these things, but they never thought of how the prerequisite for being rich was to have money, not to use luxury goods. If economic pressures turned into gender and marriage issues, how many people would still have time to ponder the underlying cause that was class stratification and exploitation? In any case, it was easier to argue with your spouse than to attack the upper class. So, what Luke was doing was pretty much guiding people toward good and promoting positive energy. He had a clear conscience. Barry raised his hand weakly. Then, what can I do? A few days ago, he had still been a super naive kid. At most, he just pushed bad guys away. Luke had a good impression of this new teammate who looked a little like a combination of his little brother Joseph and his future brother-in-law Pietro. He patted Barry's head with a smile. Don't worry. As long as you follow me, you will never have the regret of wasted years or shame of petty accomplishments. Master Wayne frowned. That's Nikolai Ostrovsky, right? Luke, the heir of socialism in his previous life, shrugged. At the very least, his words make sense. Also, aren't they very appropriate for this occasion? This had indeed been Nikolai Ostrovsky's homeland 30 years ago. Barry was stumped. Is this OS whatever sky famous? Luke said, don't worry about it. The point is that he wasn't wrong. Barry nodded. Okay. Luke patted his head again. Good luck. I have faith in you. Seeing this, Master Wayne grew a little paranoid. This guy had hit on the battle goddess and roped in Barry at the same time. It seemed that Victor was also very interested in the Foundation. No, he had to increase his involvement and investment in this Foundation. He immediately made up his mind. Master Wayne actually knew very well that compared with righteousness and fighting crime, it was rescuing the innocent that was most likely to give people a sense of identity and satisfaction. Otherwise, why would so many big shots separate themselves from their corporations on the surface and not hold any positions, but make high-profile public appearances at charity events?